everyone, and welcome into another fun edition of the Transgender Show. This is my weekly show. Each week I interview another trans person to learn about their story, share more of mine, and take your questions. Why am I doing this show? Because I struggled my entire life with depression, anxiety, and 3 bouts of suicidal thoughts. And I just want to make sure that we provide another place for other trans people to see that they're not alone in their experiences, their thoughts, and their feelings, and that they don't have to feel that depression and that anxiety. I get 2 fun bonuses out of this show. One is educating cis people. I've got several cis friends that watch, and also documenting my transition as I go through it over these next probably 2 years or longer. Well, basically how long it takes, and however long this show lasts. Let's hope that's a long time. My guest tonight is on Twitch and Twitter as AnaBeQueerly, and she lives in Toronto, Ontario, another Canadian. We have a lot of Canadians in this group, so we've got that perspective covered. Anna, how are you tonight?
Hello, I am well, thank you. Your intro is just like hitting all the right notes for me.
In the chat, if there's anything weird with the audio or if you're hearing any echoes or anything, please let me know. Throughout the interview here, go ahead and ask any questions that you'd like. It's easiest if you put a double question mark in front, and then also if you at the Transgender Show, so it'll show up in my little chat. I can see it easily, and I'll either mix those in or we'll get to them at the end. And we will start with, why don't you tell us some of your background? You are a video game designer. You have a fun kind of history of things that you went through to get there. Why don't we start there?
Yeah, okay. I'll try to keep this succinct, because when we were like back and forth before we got started, it just like swelled and like, oh yeah, and then I did this weird thing for a little bit. Oh yeah, and this little weird thing. So yes, right now I am a level designer. I work at Ubisoft Toronto. I'm working on an unannounced title, so I can't say. Don't ask me. I won't tell you. I'm sorry. I always get asked. But so before that, I worked as a millwright, an industrial mechanic doing like industrial machinery. And then before that, I briefly tried to make instruments to make money. Really weird time. And then before that, I was a university campus missionary with a Christian fellowship. That's actually where I met my wife. Before that, I was at art school for sculpture and installation. Before that was high school. So like it's just been up and down. Oh, and then somewhere in there I transitioned gender. So like no biggie.
Yeah, I love anytime I meet somebody who's freaking out about what their major is in college and what they should choose and all that. I'm thinking changing all stuff. It's like, just do in college whatever you want. The most important thing is that you end up with a degree, and so few of the people that I know, like in business or in whatever, are doing something in their specific degree. So it's just kind of like, just get the degree and worry about the rest later. You'll find it.
Amen, sister. Send them my way, because like, hot damn, it's been up and down. Yeah, a lot of why I ended up in games and game design was like I've always been a really like tactile person, and so like that's kind of how I ended up in the like mechanic millwright stuff. I loved that job. I loved working with my hands and like fixing things, because I've always been that kind of person. But like art school, like I wanted to take what I had learned, because I started doing a lot of like digital physical transition stuff, like that space in between, and 3D printing, and I learned 3D modeling, and I wanted to apply like my art background and the creative side into something technical, but also like I can't be my own boss, because I just, it's just like, well, I could do that later. I'll just have fun now and hang out. So it was a lot more of a structured environment. Game design is like very much just like, well, we're making this game. You better get your stuff done. So it's like, that's kind of how I ended up here.
Yeah, as an artist, I find that I'm kind of the same way. I thrive under the deadlines, right? The pressure of like, there's specific steps that you have to go through, and there's specific deadlines along the way. That I'm the type that it helps as well.
For sure, yeah.
So, how do you define being trans? just super general question.
You changed it up on me. We didn't practice this question. I love it. Define being trans. Good golly. It's like there's the trans community. It's like, yes, well, I can speak for all of us because we have the exact same experience. And I've been elected queen of the queers, and I will tell you exactly what the truth is. No, obviously it's for everybody, but for me, being trans is like something I'm proud of. It's just, God darn it. I'm trying not to cuss so much too. Yeah, it's just it's who you are. It's an identity. It's like being trans as someone who, like, your gender in just as simple as terms, like your gender, the psychological aspect of gender does not match how you were born, your physicality, your uh, you know, mortal coil fleshy existence.
Yeah.
And being trans is, you you change that, you alter the appearance, you step into society as the gender you feel you are in your heart, mind, soul, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, that's how I approach it, because like literally everybody's different. And
Yeah, it's a very
yeah,
personal thing. It's a very personal definition. That's kind of like why I
yeah,
like to throw that out there and see if someone has, their clear
yeah.
definition, and then we build off of there.
Well, we got it, so that's the show.
There you
Like,
go.
thank you. Yeah.
When did you first realize you were different? When did that start
Oh,
to kind of,
different.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's an easy start. Oh golly. I was actually honestly thinking about some of my earliest memories of like being trans in the last couple hours before we like got on this call again. And one of my earliest memories, I don't even know if it's a real memory, if it was a dream, or if it was just like a formed, like I created and crafted this and changed it and altered it. But it was me at my babysitter with the other kids. I was like kindergarten age, and I asked my babysitter if I could be a girl when I grew up. And like this is like, you know, trans flags waving. It's like, hey kid, good question. That's not a cis kid question. Um, and then like the other kids being like, what? um, but like, I was a kid, and I don't remember what my babysitter said. Like that's just like, but I just remember being like, why the hell am I asking these questions? Like looking back, like how did I not know? Um, so I knew I was different. I knew I was asking questions that weren't the same other kids were asking, but I just kind of like, I didn't process that wasn't a common experience for a
Mm-hmm.
while. But it was a lot more of like a cognizant front of mind awareness that like, oh, like when I was in high school, I think when a lot of people, puberty hits, girlfriends, and just like, we talked quite a bit. I really feel like I might reference our earlier conversation, because it's like we were just getting to know each other. It was actually really lovely. If
Yeah.
anyone else
Oh,
gets an
we'll get into
opportunity
all that. Yeah.
to be on this show, you should totally just hit up Emily, because it's just a wonderful conversation. But like, yeah, I felt different and weird when I didn't do the other things the other boys were doing, or like the stereotypical like, this is boy stuff. Why aren't you doing this?
Mm-hmm. So
Um,
it became
yeah.
sort of most apparent to you at about that age in through puberty. So middle school, early high
Yeah,
school.
like middle school, high school, and then like later high school, so it got a little more painful as I like, first girlfriends kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then just like that access into the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you first identify as trans?
Specifically as trans,
Mm-hmm.
would have been after I was married. So that would have been like 2017 was probably, if I had to pick a year, that's roughly when it was. Because
Okay.
it's just been like, for me, it's been a years long growth and acceptance of like, until the point I hit where I'm like, okay, now I can say I'm trans. Because there was times like years before I was ready to say it, where like if I was presented with that, I'd be like, nope, and I would just like shut down that conversation because I wasn't ready.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, same thing for me. It took a really long time to get to that definition, and then once you do, like your world kind of changes and things kind of lighten up. Someone asked me, mainly Madison asked me the other day, and suggested that I ask this on the show. Like, when was your euphoric moment? You know, was there a euphoric moment for you, and when was that? When you realized I am trans, this is who I am, and like you just kind of feel that weight lift off because everything sort of comes into focus. All of these disparate things that were in the back of your head. Did you have that?
I did. Sorry, it's just like, oh man, I forgot about like the moments you forget about it until someone reminds you. So like this was something that my wife had known about before we were even dating. So like I'm really lucky. I know that like firsthand. And but like it was something that we were aware about in our relationship when we were like building that. And then after we were married, it was this thing like, I don't think you can hide this anymore. Like I don't think you can fight it. And this is like, and my wife saved my life. Don't doubt it. And just made me who I am today, which is amazing. Just gonna keep praise and love on her. But we had bought a dress at Old Navy, and it was like one of those like $10 dress sales. So I was just like,
I used to love Old Navy.
you know, you just, oh yeah. Oh, I miss Old Navy. Just being able to buy a bunch of cheap clothes. A little unethical, but who cares? A lot of people care.
But it's so great when you're starting. Like you need those.
Yeah, exactly.
To
Sorry, I just
cheap...
like my mind split in 4 directions. I'm just like,
no, but yeah, that's a great little tangent because like you need those when you're starting out. Those cheap.
You do.
Those cheap things, those throwaway clothes of like, oh, I want to try this, and you go home and you try it on, and you're like, oh, no, that's not good.
Oh, this is a terrible cut. Yeah.
But you're like you're kind of too nervous to like. You were so nervous to buy it that you're too nervous to take it back or whatever. So you kind of need the cheap like throwaway stuff, you know.
And like, continuing on this tangent, and I will bring this back, I promise. It was just like you're rebuilding an entire wardrobe. Like you've decided to change your identity and your presentation in the world, and you need a new wardrobe to fit. So it's just like suddenly like, oh, yeah, I need all of this clothes that I don't have. So I still wear some of my clothes, pre-transition clothes, because it's just like hoodies are comfy. But yeah, so we had bought Old Navy was great for that, being able to get a number of like cheap, like affordable, honestly, pieces that like to fill out a wardrobe so that I could wear things and be comfortable and start to experience more and more euphoria. But my first ever experience was wearing one of these like $10 summer dresses. It was the first dress I'd ever worn. And I put it on and I looked down and I just started bawling. And it was just like, oh my God. and oh wow, yeah, okay. It's coming back. But yeah, it was such a powerful feeling of just like everything felt right for the first time in my life. Because literally like every other time shopping for clothes up to that point, it was a miserable experience. I was never happy. I remember, before I'd started transitioning, trying on clothes and crying in the change room because I was just like so miserable with the stuff I was wearing and the stuff I was trying on and the stuff like. But I just felt super just dysphoric and I didn't have the language for it. And then hindsight's 2020, and you were trans, girl.
Yeah, isn't it funny that moment where you go from really disliking shopping, shopping, to like it's your favorite thing in the world and it's all you want to do all the time? I don't know if that happened for you.
I mean, I'm not there yet. Like I do love shopping, but I'm not. It's not like my whole life. But for more than anybody, it's probably a bigger relief for my wife. Because when we were shopping for me before I was fully out and full time, it was like, hey honey, can you pick that up? Okay, no, not that one. No, the other one. No. Like, okay, this one here. Don't make a big deal out of it. And it's just like I was super self-conscious. I was super paranoid, and it was just a nightmare for her to be like, yo, I don't give a fuck. Just pick out the stupid dress, please. And I was
Stop
like,
freaking out about it. Wow. I love that you had somebody there with you. That's incredible. Mine goes back way early college, and my shop in those days was Mervin's, and I've told the story 1,000 times, but I haven't shared it with you. There, they had the linoleum aisles, and then the carpeted sections where the racks were. Well, I was terrified to go onto the carpeted sections, and so I would do these like flybys and like, just like, that's kind of cute. And then
like swoop in and grab it and run away before anyone
exactly
noticed.
And then I'd have to go over to the men's section and buy like 7 things to like disguise the fact
this is clearly for my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The goofy shit we do to hide it. It's just funny that you're there with your wife, or at that time probably girlfriend or fiance, and she's just like, just buy something for God's sake. It's not that big a deal.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And so, I don't know where I would be without her. I would have been doing this. I would have been doing exactly what you were doing. The swoop in and the flyby. And it's like that made me really think of something like just the fact that it's delineated on the floor alone, right? Like it's the linoleum aisle and the carpet. You wouldn't go on the carpet because it's clearly defined. This is a space. This is a space for women. And that's just like that feeling that like people don't treat you like a woman. People don't see you like a woman, and as a woman, and it's just like that. Yeah, it's such a bizarre time. And then you just like, yeah. So that my first moment of euphoria, yeah, wearing a dress for the first time and just losing it.
I remember feeling, I don't remember a specific euphoric moment like that, like the kind of the first one. I have lots of little ones, but like I remember again talking about that delineation, the sort of the floor is lava thing, the carpet's lava, where it's off limits, it's out of bounds. When I went shopping one time, can't remember which store it was or where. I'm assuming for some reason Macy's is jumping out in my mind, but thinking that like I was shopping in my section. Like I remember specifically one time where I was shopping and I'm thinking that I am shopping in my section. These are my clothes. This is where I'm supposed to be, and this is okay. Like once I got to there, like that was amazing. That was a major game changer. And
yeah, that feels so great to hear.
Yeah. And then another one that I had was we were getting ready to go on a cruise, and we went dress shopping at Windsor, me and 2 of my girlfriends. And they were actually looking for dresses. I thought I had something that I liked, so I wasn't even looking. And I saw something on a mannequin, and I'm like, hold on, I'm gonna grab one too. And we went to the dressing room, and we all 3 came out, and they're like, "Fuck you, bitch," because like it just fit me so perfectly, and it was a long, it was a tall gown. Just a straight gown with a nice like neckline, kind of deep cut, and it just was straight. And I figured I couldn't wear anything straight because my body is too straight. I needed something with curves, and this was a straight dress, and it looked great on me. And I was just like, "Holy shit!" And I showed it to them, and they like hated me for it. And I'm like, "That feels kind of good."
Good. I'm glad you like that. Yeah. Okay, good.
Well, yeah,
like, come on, let me have this, please.
Yeah, the ultimate praise when they're like, "Bitch," that felt good.
Cool.
Back to you though.
Back to me, please. This has been dreadful not talking about me.
So coming out. Who did you first come out to? Once you realized that.
Well, yeah. So coming out. I came out a number of times in different ways, at different stages. So like, there was a while where I was in a Christian community, and like, we were like, I don't know, it was a time. But like I'd gone to counselors and realized that they told me I had gender identity disorder, which is like it it's like, is it a disorder or is it just who I am? So it's a fairly conflicted title, but
the implied negativity in there is
the implied negativity of disorder. It's like, you're telling me I'm wrong? I'm out of order? No.
Yeah, not only are you wrong, you're broken.
Yeah, instead of just being like, hey, you have dysphoria. Like, that's probably, yes, that would explain it a little better. But the community I was in, like that was it seemed like something that I would, supposed to struggle with and like deny myself and fight through it, and like that's very much the language around it that I was growing up. So I was coming out to close friends at the time as someone who has gender identity disorder, and like that gender was a problem for me, and something very difficult, and I had a hard time with. So that was like I told a number of close friends in university, and I like shared that with my wife before we were dating. Like that was something we met through the same Christian community, and I told her like, hey, I have gender identity disorder. This is and like, what is that? And it was just like, because it was still at that point where I didn't know how to explain it with it, like, and it made me upset because it was like, it means I want to be a woman, and that's like, and I still didn't call myself, like I still didn't refer to myself as a trans person. So it wasn't until after my wife and I were married. So like I will say my wife was the first person I came out to as trans. But then if I'm going like trying to find out who else, like who came after that, it would be probably someone I went to college with who was actually really close to me. We were really close friends. And he's a trans man, and he was one of the first trans friends I had ever had, because we had like I came from a small town. Like there may have been trans people, but I never met them. And like or I didn't know it, which is obviously another truth. So I'm in the big city in my first year, and like in the first couple months, one of my friends is like, hey, I'm trans. Please use he him pronouns. And I was like, cool, dude, high five. And we high fived, and that was it. And he later told me I was like the first person he came out to, and that just like, and I was like, oh my god. And he's like, and that was literally the greatest response I had ever hoped for. He's like, that's what I hoped people would be like. And I was like, fuck yeah.
Just
So he's one of the
accept
first people
it.
I
Yeah,
told.
that's cool. What now? What next? What else you
Yeah,
got?
I was like, cool, high five. Like, and I was just like, it didn't even occur to me that like this was something that they were dreading telling people, that this is like, hey, this is a really big life altering moment. I was like, cool. It has no bearing on how I see you as a person or will treat you. Or like see you, I will see you, as he him now. Like there's like, yes, there's that respect there, but it's like this will not negatively impact one iota of our friendship. And that's like, that was cool.
Yeah.
Glad I was that person and not like, oh, weird, dude. I'm glad I'm not an asshole sometimes. Yeah, exactly, right? Like, what? Yeah.
How was coming out to your family?
Oh, God. Awkward. But not bad. Just like, how do you don't prep for that like you try, right? You try to like, how do I do this? For a while, so I still am, but much less now, thank you to hormones. Was a very hairy person. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just gonna try to get in the frame there. So I just have a lot of body hair, and it was thick, and it was black, and it was coarse, and I got some Italian heritage in me. And so, but I'd started shaving my hands because it was like winter time. I think it was winter. Yeah, it was winter. It was close to Christmas, so I was wearing long sleeves, and I just thought like, it goes it goes all the way up, like to my hair. So it's just like, if I start going all like further up my arm, where do I stop? And I just like I'll shave like up to the collar, like the wrist, sorry, the cuff, and like keep it there.
Yeah.
And then we were at my parents' place, and I was like, I knew I needed to talk to them, but I was looking for a good time. And we were sitting at the table, like my sister and my brother-in-law, and both my parents were there. And I was just like, I was like, this might be an all right time. Like we were there for another day or two, I think. And it's like, okay, like I might tell them in the middle of the weekend, and like this will be good. And then my sister looks, she's like, are your hands shaved? And I was like, and then I just went for it because I was like, yeah, it's just like, it's like she pushed me out the plane. And I was like, oh god. So I've been seeing some counselors and trying to figure stuff out, and I fumbled it so hard. I was like, and they kind of like told me I'm trans, and so like this is what I'm doing, and then like my dad just put his hand on my hand and was like, okay, we support you and we love you. And I was like, oh God. And I started crying, obviously, because,
Yeah.
that's the biggest friggin' weight off my shoulders. I didn't think they would be mad, but I thought they wouldn't understand. Took my mom a little bit, like when I say a little bit, it was like, she was like, yeah, we love you and support you. She's like, I don't understand and I need a little time because it's a big change. And I was like, you're right, it is a big change. And she's like, you've had a while for this. You've had time with this. She's like, this is brand new to me, so I just need to like process. And I was like, you got it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then my sister, after all this, my sister's like, yeah, but why did you just shave your hands? And I was just like, well, where do I stop? She's like, but you could have gone a little further up. I was just like, thank you, sister. So that was just like, the sibling, just like, sure, whatever. But this is weird. That like not you and your identity and all that. Just like your shaved hand looks weird to me. And I was just like, ah.
All right. Well, okay.
Yeah, it's like fine, thank you. They're great. And they, my sister and brother-in-law both like, yes, like we've got your back, like we love you. I was like, okay, cool. But like it was just that moment.
Well, and you talked about, and one of the things we talk about a lot on this show is that when there's a point where you need to have the conversation with people, especially important people in your life, and it's fairly early on because you're going to start, exploring some stuff.
Yes.
And,
sorry, go ahead.
And but a lot of times I think that intersects with this part where you're still coming to grips with it, you don't fully understand it, and you haven't, maybe you haven't defined yourself all the way out as trans yet, or don't know what you want or whatever. But yeah, there's this part where you kind of have to start telling people, but you don't have the language yet, you don't have the confidence, and you don't really know how to start that conversation.
Yes.
So
just yes, all of it. Because I didn't have the language. There's a lot of things I'm still learning. And I think I can probably speak fairly confidently about, like, on behalf of a lot of trans people about saying there's a lot that we're still learning about ourselves, and it's just like a constant journey. Like we talked about like this idea of a journey, and it's something I kind of have a hard time like calling my transition a journey, because like in my mind a journey has an end point. I don't know what my end point is, right? Like I don't want to define a goal, because it's like I think Ashley Versus said if you don't have a goal you can't fail.
Yes.
It's just gotcha. Yeah, so it's pretty great. But like in terms of like coming out, I came out a number of times as I got more language to describe it, as I understood better myself, because like as I was more prepared and more comfortable to do it. So like there's like however many coming outs people have, is like by the time I got to like friends or like certain friends, I guess, or like even like employers, like as I started applying for jobs, including the one I'm in now, like my current job, in the interview I was like, so I'm transitioning gender. Is that going to be a problem here? And they're like, oh God, no. It's like, okay, cool. Nice. But like in the job interview, which like a lot of people sometimes they don't do, because then like they can just discriminate you out of like they can just not hire you. It's like I don't even. I was at that point, like I was just like, I don't even know how to describe it. They're just like, I was the kind of person like, well, if they have a problem with me being trans and wouldn't hire me on that basis, well, then they can get fucked, and I'm gonna tell them, and if they don't want me, then good. And it's just like, I was really confrontational. That's
ready for the fight.
I was ready to fight people.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering, and I think that I think that an important lesson to take, at least from mine, and how poorly it went with my parents, really is as you start to realize that you start to put some of these things together, it's best to share it with people, especially the people that you love, and talk openly about it, and talk openly about the fact that you don't know. Don't feel like you have to have all the answers and go to them, because like Anna is saying, and like she alluded to what Ashley had said, you if you have a goal, then like it's kind of a bad idea. Just go along with it. And so don't feel like you have to know everything about what you are and where you're going with it before you start having these conversations. When Anna told her mom said, I need a little bit of time to deal with it. So I think it's a better idea to start having that conversation earlier when you don't have the answers, and kind of go through it with them and include them in that, instead of feeling like, okay, I got to figure this out, and then I can tell them, because then there's no good time where you know all the answers.
Yeah, like
Getting off the soapbox now.
no, that's just really cool. I want to say again that like my mom was still very supportive. Just like not that you're saying she wasn't. I just like I need people to know my mom loves me. And I actually, again, to make it even more awkward, I had a bralette that I had like torn some stitching on because I was learning how to take them off still, and I asked her to fix it, and she did. Like, this is like right after I came out. It's like, hey, I'm trans. I'm transitioning into a woman. Can you fix my bra? And she was just like, yes, okay, and then just did it because just freaking superhero.
Nice.
But yeah,
That's
and then like
wonderful.
some people like need that, like want to have a goal or want to have a target or want to have like to give them hope, something to strive for. But like personally for me, I don't want to have this like target, because I don't know. I feel like in my transitions so far,
Mm-hmm. Most of those were
in my
accurate sound.
transition so far, most of those were words. I've been like learning that just like being hurt by false expectations, and like this realization that like it's painful when you have this ideal when before you even start transitioning. It's been painful for me in some ways to be like, I will never actually look like that. And it's just like, so just realizing that like when I have these aesthetic goals, these like fashion goals, these like I've got this like I had this person in my mind that I wanted to be,
Mm-hmm.
but like these shoulders aren't going to get any less broad. And that is a big sense of dysphoria for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And like I don't say this lightly. It actually bothers me a lot too, and it's something I'm learning to deal with. But this idea that like there are some pieces of clothing that I would have loved, that I was like dreaming about wearing before I started transitioning it, just realizing like, oh, it just doesn't look good on my body.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. Like, so realizing that like your dreams and goals are great to give you hope, but like don't cling to them as like the end of your journeys when you can look like that, because you might get hurt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
You're setting yourself up to hurt yourself, and that's a bummer.
Yeah, it is. Oh, it's a bummer. Can we
Yeah.
talk about fun stuff now?
Yeah, just real quick, my shoulders, my shoulders are kind of broad for my shape, and I'm a little bummed about that. The big one for clothes is my rib cage. My rib cage right
Oh
about
yeah,
here, just under boob level, is just too big to
on
fit
the
in a lot
boob.
of the dresses that I want. It's just like,
So
can I just?
I started for a while waist training
Uh huh.
with a corset, like and like I got to a point where a corset I could actually like put it like, you get used to it. I
Mm-hmm.
wore a corset, like a tight lace corset, for like an 8-hour shift at work once, and my posture was great. But like it's also like you got to work up to it, and there are some things you can do, but there's a lot of work and a lot of determination, which most trans people have, because you got to be pretty stubborn to put up with some of the shit we put up with. But but like there's also learning to like love and accept the beauty that you have already in you, right? Like your friends saw you in a dress that you thought you wouldn't look good in, and they said, "Fuck you, bitch, that looks good."
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that happens because we're, we're women, we're beautiful people, and like you just, it's there. It might not be this ideal that you had in your mind, but you are. There we go. We're on a positive note.
Yeah.
You might not have hit this goal that you had in mind, but you're you still are like a beautiful woman.
Yeah, I think
And
it.
like
I think it.
literally every woman has that same struggle
Yes.
that I've ever talked to.
Hmm.
It's like you won't look like this dream girl that you want to look like.
Yeah, every woman has that same kind of. I mean, for lack of of another term, like they have those dysphoric moments where like they want to wear certain pieces of clothing too. They think this looks
Hmm.
beautiful on this model, and they try it on, and it just doesn't work. So it is a very common thing. Um,
Hmm.
I had another point and I lost it as soon as I jumped into that.
I'm
So
so sorry.
let's see. No, it's just things disappearing from my brain. I wanted to pull in some things from some comments from the chat. It doesn't look like it copied all the way. Let's see. Um, Peach mentioned that it was a great point for us.
Peach.
We have years to process it. It's unrealistic for us to expect many to just click and understand it, especially
Yeah,
family. But it's amazing when they do. So
it
we're
really
very
is.
lucky with
Yeah.
that.
I'm like really, really excited and happy and just so many feelings. Those are both like current emotions. I was very thrilled and just so relieved that like they loved me and like were supportive and like was yeah extremely understanding that like I have had years. It took me years to be okay to say I was trans or
Yeah.
transitioning gender. I didn't even say I am trans. I was like, I am transitioning gender. It's like robotic. So like, yeah, I I understand the hurt that some people feel when they come out and their parents are like, I need time because it's new to them. It's a shock. I understand that hurt because you want these people to like they've been with you your entire life and supported you this whole time. So there's obviously like, yeah, I've got a lot of empathy for everybody in the situation because I've been on my side and I definitely know it was hard on my parents. Like not hard, but like definitely know it was a lot for them to process. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
are
It is.
right, Peach. The ever wise Peach Root.
I'm getting more hate in the
Best
chat.
mod ever.
I'm getting more hate in the chat. A friend of mine, Megan, is jealous of my legs when I wear a skirt, so she's she's throwing some shade there in the chat. I love it. So let's go into some of the questions that have gone here. So while we're still sort of on that same topic, or at least in the same ballpark of it. Oh, that's a game-related one. We'll get to your job in a little bit.
Cool.
Despite having despite having one of the most incredible women I've met as a wife, and her being aware of your sexuality, how has your relationship and partnership been throughout the years? How has your relationship and partnership been with your wife throughout the years?
How's it been, honey? Good. Just give me a thumbs up. Was that Peach Roof again?
Yes. Yeah, actually, she's
I,
firing the questions away, and I haven't had a chance to really
oh,
read them yet. So, like,
love you,
I'll
Michaela.
let you answer, and I'll start reading these so that we know kind of ahead of time.
Sure.
I can
Yeah,
slot
no.
them into their place.
So like my relationship with I'm gonna name her Erin, has just been friggin' magnificent. God, where to start? She's just been like the biggest support in this whole thing, and our relationship has changed because like, sorry, so many thoughts, so many feels, all of them trying to escape. It's been good, just good. I love her a lot, so this is gonna be emotional. But like, we have taken this in like slowly. Like it's been something we've had to process together in a lot of ways, and like I love her so much. This is like, and I don't want, I don't know how to say this without like, I love her enough that I put my transition in her hands,
Hmm.
which is so like, and I know this is a very sensitive topic for a large number of people in our community because not a lot of people have had that end well. Like, not, as in, like their partners have left and not been able to handle being with someone who's trans. So
Or you try and put
I
the transition like in their hands. They just try and shut it down because they're having a hard time dealing with it.
exactly. So yes, this is a very difficult ground that I am trying to tread here, because I love and respect everybody, and I understand a lot of hurt that has come from like marriages ending when partners aren't supportive and won't let you be that person. When I say I put my transition in her hands, it was kind of like the speed of which things were happening, because it was we didn't know which steps would look like what, and how we would feel, how she would feel if different aspects of my transition. And I really deeply cared for her,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted her to, and just the relationship we built was strong. So like I trusted her to love me and to support me through this, and she trusted me to like maybe not like pump the brakes and put a halt to everything, but like listen to her concerns and her feelings, uh and like understand that this is like she wasn't a lesbian when we got married.
Mm-hmm.
So like understanding like, you know, attraction changes, and like people grow and people change. So like it was, yes, it was, we grew closer
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways because we communicated a lot more clearly, a lot more intentionally about things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just
Well,
gonna
it's not.
put, am I doing good? I'm doing good. Okay.
Well, no, and the way you approached it is through the eyes of a through the framing of a partnership where, let
Yeah.
me make sure my camera, okay, where we're gonna go through this together.
Hmm.
So Celia, my second guest, she had a conversation with her wife and her kid, her daughter, and had to basically reassure them that they weren't losing. They weren't losing their partner, they weren't losing their father figure, they weren't losing that role. For her wife, the wife, she had to convince the wife that the wife wasn't losing her husband. So you kind of have to find a way in any relationship when you go through any kind of struggle like that, how to keep the partnership intact and not dictate anything. Say, how are we going to work on this together, and reassure them that your fears, your thoughts, and your needs are. I still want to meet those, and I know how can we approach that.
Yeah. And yeah, that's a really good, a really good way to say it. Yeah, and just like at the same time, this was also something that like she was aware of, that it was something that I was struggling with and trying to work through, like as we were dating, as we got engaged. Like this was all something that, like, it wasn't a surprise or a brand new thing. So it was like it was something there, and like that we kind of agreed when we got engaged and married that we would figure out together.
Mm.
So like yeah, but we grew closer as we like communicated a lot more clearly. Like we definitely had a couple times where like we need to, like, I promise you that I will talk to you about this.
Yeah.
Because like if I there were times where I just wanted to shut down and just kind of
Yes.
like I need to not talk. I just want this, and I'm mad that you are unsure. And then like, but I was like, and I was like, I need to explain that I am angry and upset because this is a thing that I would really like, but you are not. And I was like, and I know. And it's just like a lot of like just the, like, you know, couples therapy stuff you
Yeah.
see on TV, and it's like it actually works. Oh my god.
Well, and that's what happened with my relationship is in some of the key initial conversations there we hit some really there were a lot of really confrontational moments and a lot of hurt feelings on both sides and a lot of
Yeah.
confusion. And again, it was sort of early on, it was long, I mean, it was 15 years before I identified as trans, after some of our initial conversations and some initial
Mm-hmm.
confrontations. And so, unfortunately for us, it went the opposite way, where we kind of lost the ability to communicate because there were hot button issues that we couldn't talk about without, things kind of blowing up. And, that just started a whole pattern. And then it just gets harder and harder to communicate about all kinds of things. So, it's really important to be able to have that with your partner, to
Mm-hmm.
have that, like I said, the partnership, to talk to
Yeah.
them and say, I want to hear your concerns, I want to honor your concerns, and I want to do that. But you need to understand that this is a part of me. This is something we're gonna have to deal with together.
Yeah.
I love
I'm
that.
really sorry that was your experience. It's really like it hurts. It's hard.
Yeah, I think it's very
It
common
was
too.
scary. In a
Hmm.
lot of ways it was very scary for me to like put this like my identity, like trust somebody else with who I am.
Yeah.
It was and I love her. I love her to bits. And I like it that still was like a big deal for me. So
Hmm. Yeah, thankfully
uh
I was able to learn after my next relationship. Right after that, I fell for another girl, and told her about generally about it. I still wasn't identifying as trans, but I kind of told her
mhm,
about yeah, gender identity issues and things like that, and she was just like but we decided we could still date because we really liked each other. And then it just kind of came to some point where I realized that like I really had to explore this part of myself and really go all into being trans, and she couldn't go along with it. And it was so I made the decision, and we split up. And that was just
mhm.
a major turning point for me in my life. Is like, okay, I can stand up for myself in a relationship and say this is what I need, and
Yeah.
this is what I need to be. And if you can't, then it's been nice knowing you.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
you have to be able to stand up for yourself. But then, like I said, also make sure it takes the right type of person that can accept that, and then it
Yeah.
takes the ability to work on it with them.
Yep.
I feel like I've taken over this conversation
I,
entirely.
no, you're not. You're not taking this conversation over. It's I just getting all emotional. I'm just like, yeah, I know. Like that's why like I come into this like I won the friggin' lottery in terms of partners.
Yeah.
Like be, because I've just seen and I just deeply care for so many folks in the trans community that like they don't have that same experience and they've had like very very painful experiences with
Yeah.
partners that just don't accept them and won't stay with them and divorce is not just like a well see you later. It's like you're oh my god.
Yeah. It's rough. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really common. And I had this narrative in my head for a long time. It's finally starting to shift, but the narrative was the only trans people that are married were married before they were trans, and then came out, and their partner decided that it was worth it to stay with them. And like I said, I'm kind of starting to tweak that and get better about that, but it's still kind of hard because then most of the people I talk to that are trans that are married, they were before
Transitioned
that. So
after marriage.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's nice that
Yeah.
you had that open, honest communication from the start. I'll
Yeah.
take once
So like I wasn't oh god.
I was gonna say once I get in start to date, I will hire you as my marriage counselor.
Oh god. No. Don't put that on me. Okay. Yeah.
um,
That's-
so you mentioned that you did missionary work, and
Yes.
that's where you met Aaron. What is your religious
Yes.
background? Like just kind of what religious faith,
Go.
and
Yeah.
how big did it factor into your family life? And then we'll add on to that later. Let's start there, and then we'll add on top of it.
Okay. So the religious history of Anna Norton. God, like I grew up going to church, like
Mhm.
so many white people,
And in what
white North
faith?
American. Christian. It was at the time. It was oh, um, Friends, the Friends denomination, right? It's a branch of Quaker.
Sure.
It's
Oh, sure.
it's it was a real church, I swear.
Yeah, I
It's
totally
the
believe you. I
totally.
totally
Uh,
100%.
it was the full denomination name was like the Evangelical Friends. It was like it's in the whole like family tree of like Christian churches in North America. It was like the Quakers, and then there was the quiet Quakers and the noisy Quakers. The quiet Quakers are still called Quakers, and the noisy Quakers are like evangelicals, and the Friends denomination is just like Friends is just a weird name.
I'm sorry, but
Um,
who else? Who in the chat when she says that it's the Friends denomination pictures that
right?
their statue of the Savior is the Buddy Christ?
Right? Yeah. No.
Hard to
So,
do the
anyways,
pointing
grew
with
up
the
in that
finger.
church, and then we like my organized sports took us away from organized religion. So like my sister started playing hockey, she started playing travel hockey. Um, Another fun time about gender bending. I was doing needlepoint with one of the mothers in the stands at the hockey arena while my sister played hockey. Duh, you trans girl. So and like we stopped going to church, whatever, grew away from it, grew up, went to college,
Hmm.
and I started dating a midwife uh, who was also pretty devout Christian. Her father was a pastor. It's a denomination I do not remember. Um, and like, I caught her in that like there was like a weird like wild phase in her life. Caught her as in we started dating. Um, and just like some things in her life had happened and events. um, and so like she just kind of like we talked about religion and like we went to church once or twice um and it was just like, yeah, I used to go to church, like whatever, I know church. And then after we broke up, I was just like, for some reason I just like dove into the Bible because it was just like hurting, and that was a thing that she had showed me about, and I
Mm.
think probably there was this like connection to her that I felt with that. I just wanted to be close to her.
Okay, so it was
And
post breakup
yes,
that kind of that drove you into it.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. In hindsight, it was just like, come on, girl, it's a little basic. Um, but then I found a Christian fellowship at the art school I was at, and met them, and they were actually all like, because it's an art school, like even the Christian fellowship, which is normally like pretty dorky, tight-laced kids, was actually like pretty cool people, because it's art school,
Hmm.
everyone's cool. Um, so then I made like these people were great, and I became friends with them, and like there was this really weird, thinking back, there's this really weird first encounter because like I wanted to meet up with them, and they're like, they normally met up at this like one church, and they're like, oh yeah, this weekend we're actually like over here at this other building. And I went to this other building, and it turns out there's this like big feast, and there was like a baptism going on, and I was like, oh god. And but I was like so hungry for like friends and
Uh,
community and like just people to be with, that I was just like, okay. But like my reaction, it wasn't to like mingle with these people, because literally no one said like, oh hi, welcome. It was just like, and then I heard people like yelling like, hey, we need more people in the kitchen. And I was like, okay. And I walked into the kitchen and I just started serving. It was such a bizarre moment. um so oh goodness, I don't remember that denomination of that church. Is Christian, just
just
Christian.
Grace in general, yeah.
Christian.
So
They have a denomination, I just
how
don't
did you get
remember.
into the missionary work then? How did it
Right.
lead to that seems like even still a far
I
jump.
just went off on a tangent and I just kept telling you my life history. Um, it was the Christian
I'll reel you
fellowship
back
that I
in.
had joined. Reel me in, reel me in. The Christian fellowship that I had met, I like looked them up, and they had a message board at the school with like a little flyer being like, oh yeah, like the OCAD Christian Fellowship. And I was like, cool, these people are Christians, they'll teach me. And they did. And then that same fellowship, turns out it was a like an international ministry group, and they focus on campus ministry. So they send interns or staff workers, like people that like to the schools to run Bible studies and to run like mentorship programs and like
Okay.
um, yeah, spiritual counseling, like that kind of thing. And I was like, I got involved with this group, and I was like, I want to do this. Um, but it was also because like I wanted I have a lot of problems with like I need to be known for being great at something.
Mm.
Um, so like it's like I want these people to think I'm great at Jesus, and then went and worked for them for a year. I did an internship with them at London, Ontario, Western University, which is where I met Erin,
Okay.
my wife.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm still stuck on that. You've got the little badge or the trophy, like the participation trophy that says best at Jesus.
Best at Jesus. I was not the best at
2016.
Jesus, because it turns out if your entire motivation is to like be great at something, um, Christianity is not the one for you, because it's just like it's a lot of self-sacrifice and like just like making
Mhm.
your motivations shine through if you're like not in the right spot. Like there's a lot of it was a really like purpose-driven, like Jesus-centered community.
Mhm.
And like there was in a lot of ways they were doing a lot of like really great things. Like they were helping people grow and like find like bad negative patterns in their life and like how to break the cycles of like family history and like abuse and alcoholism. Like there's a lot of crazy stuff that they were doing that was like amazing work. But it's also like if I was there doing it because I wanted to look good or I wanted these people to like me,
Uh-huh.
it's just like
Sort of the wrong motivation a little bit.
you're gonna get tired of that. It's like maybe it's not worth it.
Yeah. So
Anywho, I got
what?
me a wife out of it.
Yeah, but
So I'm the winner.
was she part of the ministry program there? And London, Ontario.
Yes.
That's something in Ontario, has nothing to do with London, right?
It has nothing to do with London, England. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a medium-sized, small to medium-sized city
Okay.
in south central Ontario,
Okay.
which is a province,
Mhm.
not unlike the states in the United States.
Mhm. It's where your airport's at, right? That's why.
We
I
we
think
do
I've
have
heard
an
more of it.
airport there, actually.
That's why I've heard of it.
Oh, cool.
So you met Erin because of that. Was she part of the church there? Was she part of
She
that?
was one of the students there,
Okay.
and I was like
You were
an
sent to convert
intern.
her.
Hmm?
You were sent to convert her?
No, she was already part of this, like one of the, oh my goodness, that's gross burp. She's one of the converts when I got there. She was one of the students who was like helping do all the work, who was
Okay.
helping run the Bible studies, who was helping meet and organize and like lead group events and stuff like that.
So as you guys got into it and you formed your relationship and you started to have these wonderful conversations, this honest thing, and you built this bond and started down this path with the context of your gender identity and things like that. How did that affect both of your connection to religion? How has that shifted and changed?
Now you're asking the hard questions. Uh,
And then we'll get to fun stuff
you're good.
later.
You're good at this. You're good at this. So it
I
was
may not be the best
difficult.
at Jesus, but I'm trying to be pretty good at this.
Only one of us can have that badge, and it's mine. So like it was hard because like I'd learned and seen a lot of ways in which just like a lot of what I had actually been like teaching and learning while I was ministering to the university students um, was that like this idea that like God and Jesus and is love and acceptance, and this idea that like if you read through the Bible, like Jesus loved everybody. It's like, and then it's like, oh, he literally like told people love everybody. Just that was his thing.
Mm-hmm.
um, and just like seeing a lot of ways where it's like a lot of the like and like the doctrines of like the gays are evil and like that's founded not sounded that's founded on like miscontextualized snippets of the Bible that people are contorting to be what they actually like being what they want them to mean. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot to be said for like, oh, like none of this is actually saying I'm a terrible person. And like so like there was a time where we were trying to reconcile both like my identity as I was transitioning and coming out, and this like faith that was at the time was a very big part of our lives. It's honestly been yeah, it's like I haven't spoken about this super openly before now. So like if I'm fumbling and stuttering, it's just because like it's not that I'm uncomfortable. I'll tell you that now. It's just like it's new for me to talk about it.
Well, and yeah, when you've got
So
something
that's
like that's so foundational to who you are, and you're trying, especially when you're trying to like kind of excel at that, when you set this kind of goal for yourself of really getting into this and being quote unquote good at it. We're joking about that, but it's a big part of you, and then you start to realize these things about you, and we'll get to a little another part of that in a second of some of the counseling that you received there that kind of threw you off. But
God.
It totally makes sense when you hear so many negative voices that propose that they're proponents of the Bible, supposedly, and yet it seems to contradicts you as a person, but then also starts to kind of contradict your beliefs in what the Bible truly says.
Yeah. And there's also okay, goodness. I'm sorry. I got caught up in what you were saying and then trailed off on my own thoughts. So were you redirecting and asking me a question, or was where do you want me to go with this? I'm sorry. I'm just going to point blank ask you.
The base, the core of the question,
Yeah.
have you guys maintained a strong connection to religion? Is that a big part of your relationship still, or is it kind of shifted more towards like a spiritual thing where it's something you guys share or hold within yourselves and don't follow the organized religion so much?
Okay, short answer, no, it's not a big part of our relationship. Long answer, it's been a very difficult time for me, and the communities that I was a part of, and not specifically people, but the church I grew up in that I started going back to, and I was actually I've preached there multiple times. I got letters from people that have been, one letter specifically from people that have been a part of my life since I was a child, calling me an abomination and despicable and detestable. It's kind of hard to come back from that. In terms of organized religion. Erin plays violin for the church that her parents attend, and she music for them, and we watch their Sunday service because it's all streamed online. So it's a part of our lives, and there's I still value the things I learned and I taught and I did, and I value some of the a good number of the relationships I had made, and from that from that part of my life, from those communities. There was a time where I tried to reconcile both, but we were going to church as I was transitioning. There's the church here in Toronto that's a pretty progressive church, and I honestly really like them. And I had met with the pastor and told him I was trans, and he was like, "Okay, cool. So how can we support you?" And I was like, high five. Yeah. He was 10 years ago, he's this would have floored me, but he's honestly, he's okay, this is, yes, I want to help you out. And I was okay. So it's there's a lot of positive happening as well, but just I needed to focus on me for a little bit and figure out what the hell is going on with me. And there were times I was I was trying to be the best at Jesus, but it was still a very core part of my identity, was trying to figure out how to serve this Christian community and how to be a better person. I'm aware of the faults that I had back then, and realizing that I was indirectly self-serving. I was looking for the praise of people. I was trying to get these people to think I was great and love me more, but that was not my job. Was supposed to be get them to love Christ more. I was oh right, I did it wrong. I see what I did wrong. So I understand the problems I made, and but yeah, and the short answer is short answer, long answer, I did it wrong. It's still there, and it's something that I'm not denying is a part of our lives and is not present, but it's not the core foundation of our relationship at this point.
Do you feel like that's something that you might turn back to as a
yes,
once you've got that kind of confidence now to go and actually start preaching again as a trans person and be that guiding force, be that example for people?
So preaching, that's a big one. I don't know about that. Cause like, yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I can dedicate enough of my life to being in that position anymore where like I can prepare and I can like meditate and like thoughtfully prepare like a sermon.
Yeah.
I just
That's gotta be tough.
who's
I would
got
imagine.
that time?
Yeah.
But I would go back to church. Like it's and like there are still like I'm in the tech industry. I'm a fairly scientific minded person. So like a lot of this also comes with like I have a good number of atheist friends and like I understand like I understand there's a lot of reconciling with like empirical evidence and the existence of God. It's like these are questions I have as well. These are questions like I don't know. I don't know the answers. Like if someone's like, "Do you believe in God?" and it's like, I I think I do. Why? And I was like, "Fuck if I know." But like
I
the
don't have
things
anything
I've
better to do
seen
on a
through
Sunday. What
those
about what I gotta say?
communities, the things I've seen through those communities, and like the like honestly, like I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like you start to see things happen, and people rally around a cause, and like such like have like a really wonderful, meaningful, positive impact on people's lives and communities, and like in a lot of ways, like I really think that like the teachings of the Bible, if you like actually actually read them and like interpret them contextually for the time that they were written, the time like the time that they were written for one, because they were written hundreds of years, thousands of years sometimes after the actual events that they're recording. It was an oral history, so there's a lot of like there's not only the story that's being told about the people and the context that they're in, but the story that's being written by a different group of people and the
Yeah.
context that they're in. So there's like a lot of unpacking that needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
When you do that and like actually get down to it, there's a lot of really good lessons, a lot of really good principles to live by.
Yeah, and like you said,
And
the
like,
main one
yeah.
that you get from Jesus is love everybody, and it's like, why do we have all this other crap? Why can't we just kind of focus on that one and let that be
Oh,
the
but
general
they're different than me,
religion?
and do I have to love them if they're different than me? It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
but they have a red flag and I have a blue flag, and so that must mean they're bad, right? All right,
exactly.
so
Yes.
jumping off of the religious topic,
This
'cause
was
I think
not
we
what we agreed to
desperately
talk
need to.
about before we had this.
I was
had this
honoring the chat and the questions coming up, and I think
Oh,
we
okay,
covered
cool.
it. And so
Okay, cool.
now let's move to some of the more fun stuff. So we talked about um, the journey and kind of identifying some of those things that how we figured out that we were trans. And I love some of the stuff we were talking about especially like in high school, middle school, once all the hormones kick in and all that kind of stuff, not being able to understand or identify with the behavior of boys and men in high school. Let's talk about some of that for you. What were some of the experiences that you had along that? Because I think that's another common experience and kind of a funner topic. Because funner's a word.
Thank you. Like the Christianity topic is like it's very conflicting for me because I'm just like in so many different places, and it's like I don't even it's like I don't even know where I stand right now. So it's just like I'm trying to like speak eloquently about something that I'm just like, do I still believe in God? Oh, sorry. It's just like it's very heavy. Let's talk about high school. So, goodness, so like my first like real girlfriend was I was in grade 11 and she was in grade 12. And like the story is still like it's really I don't know. It's like really Anna. Okay, so we were like first girlfriend ever, like second or third date, like you're high school students, you're supposed to be horny. We go to the movies. She's wearing a mini skirt, and like a lot of people probably know where this is supposed to go. So we're like in the back of the theater. She made sure we sat in the back, and it was just like she wanted to like, make out, get a little frisky, and I was like, I had my hand, we were holding hands on the like armrest, the shared armrest of the movie theater,
Mm-hmm.
and then like, she's like, oh, she put my hand on her knee, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, this is nice, and then just like, she'd just like start moving and like trying to shift my hand like further up her leg, and I just like, okay, it's like I guess I'll put my hand like on her in her thigh, like this is okay, cool, and then she just like, she was trying to like signal like, hey, go up my skirt, and I was just like, um, okay, like what's going on here? I don't understand this. And then I actually like her skirt was starting to hike up because just like my hand was there, and I didn't realize she was actually pulling it up, and I grabbed her skirt and I pulled it back down and put my hand back on the armrest, and like I was just like, no, I don't like. What are you doing? Oh, your leg is exposed. That must be uncomfortable for you. Let me hear. And I was just like, it was not even like on my radar that like, hey, there's the vagina there and you're supposed to touch it.
Uh-huh.
So like, sorry, getting a little PG-13. And like, that's one of those like in hindsight, like, God, that, like I didn't realize until well after that like that was the kind of thing that like, guys didn't pull skirts down to, like I not like pulled it down, but like repositioned to make sure that like the person's legs weren't exposed, and like, yeah. And we'd also talked about like the same girlfriend, like she was like, hey, we should have a threesome with so and so, and I was just like, but no, I don't want to. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to have like a romantic connection with you. Like I enjoy bonding, like getting closer to you and like experiencing this and sharing this with you. And I remember telling some friends that like some guy friends of mine, and they're like, dude, what the hell is wrong with you? And there's like, oh, that other girl's so hot. And I was like, yeah, but like I'm dating this girl, and I want to like share this experience with her. And I
Mm-hmm.
was just like, didn't click that I was like, yeah.
Yeah, just another one of those things that you see that and you feel wrong. You feel like, okay, this is the way a guy is supposed to act, and he's supposed to just
Yeah,
ogle women's boobs and
just
all
like
that kind of stuff,
realizing,
and just
yeah.
and it doesn't feel right, and you're like, what's wrong with me? And they're like, well, I'm not gay, like what is it? But what's wrong with me?
Oh,
Because I don't understand how men act.
off camera. Yeah, I didn't. It's just like hiding. Just like it's just too embarrassing. Um, because like, yeah, it didn't click in that like I wasn't acting the way that like I was acting how I thought, like I was trying to be a good person.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I was like, and I was just like acting on even on my feelings or my emotions. Like it was like I wasn't I wasn't gonna take advantage of this person. Like that was like, why would I do these things? And like that girlfriend later told me like she thought I was gay. She 100% thought I was gay and just like closeted or like
Mm-hmm.
just didn't was completely unaware. And like it's I don't know. It's one thing that like a number of trans people will maybe share the experience with me, but like that might have been your first time trying on women's underwear, right? Like that was for me, and
Mm-hmm.
like, and she was very uncomfortable. She's like, God, no, this is fucked up. And I was like, what? I kind of like it. It's just
Uh-huh.
like, but right, this she thought I was gay, and like, if I was still talking to her, I would, like, hey, you were close. And I just
I'd be
like because
curious
I
to ask
wasn't
her.
doing the thing, like as you said, I wasn't doing the things that like typical guys do,
Yeah.
right? Like I wasn't. And like there are men that are, you know, gentlemen and like but like I had a girlfriend that was like proposing we have a threesome with somebody, and like the common the common conception in social realms and pop culture is that dudes jump on that shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That was
that's
not
supposed to be
me.
the pinnacle, right? And yeah, when you're not into that, but you're still into the girl, it's really confusing. You
Yeah,
know.
it's very confusing.
Yeah, I had
It's
a
very confusing.
I had a situation that I kind of I lump into this same sort of category as not acting like and not understanding other boys in high school. We went on a road trip late in high school, like senior year of high school. It was sort of our first thing away. It was all just the guys, and we get to a hotel, and we're getting up the next morning to go early to watch a concert, and the guys just want to put on porn, and I just kind of like laid down on the floor and tried to go to sleep and ignore it because I had no interest in it whatsoever, and I thought I just like I was like that doesn't appeal to me at all.
Yeah. I've heard this story from you. I've heard a similar story from other dudes, and I just like every time it's like, why do you want to be in a room with a bunch of horny dudes? Like, what is like? Are you if you're all straight? Like, if you're all gay, like, yeah, I get it, just everybody, boners everywhere. But like, you're all supposed to be straight, apparently, supposedly straight. Like, what is appealing about this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it just like the idea, and I wasn't even stuck up on that of like being in a room with horny guys. Like that wasn't even a factor of it. It's like why would I be interested in this?
Cultural norm.
Mm-hmm.
Of
but it's like I could see that I was supposed to be on board with that. Like especially not because all of my friends were down with it, and we were all pretty normal guys. They weren't. This wasn't like a bunch of horny bastards or like the big popular jocks or anything. It was just typical guys, and that was another one of those ones of like, I don't think I fall into typical, and I don't know what that means, but okay, we'll just go with it. And then when you get into relationships and those like the same experiences you have start to kind of happen, where it's just like, I don't just want to take her home to try and bang her. Like I want to have romantic nights. I want to make dinner, and
you want to come back to my place. Well, I thought we were having a great conversation over dinner here.
I guess we could, but we're having so much fun right here.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought we had like a big breakthrough.
I'm just gonna warn you now. Your entire like talk show career will be a bunch of trans people being like, yeah, it's really a lot like so and so said. So like this whole conversation reminds me of like Erica Newgirl. Cis people don't think these things. And like, yeah, like this is stuff that like, oh, I guess like cis guys didn't like act that way, or like cis people don't ask these questions, or like cis people don't, it's just like, oh yeah, I should have known.
What are some of the others? Let's see if we can play this game and see if we can get it to work. We sort of played with the idea, and I wrote it down. So let's see how far we can go.
Okay.
The clues that I was transgender, that of course we didn't pick up on until way later in life. But
oh damn.
All that. So we'll go back and forth. What's one for you? A clue that you didn't know at the time that suggests that you were transgender, but you didn't realize it until much later.
Oh golly, I'm on the spot. So I think I told you like one of the earliest memories I have is like me asking my babysitter if I'd grow up to be a girl.
Mm-hmm.
That is like a ding ding ding. Mm-hmm. That's the first clue. Your turn.
I didn't realize this was a thing until much later. I had a girlfriend in preschool. I actually proposed to her. That was the first time I was engaged. And I had a girlfriend every year. We moved a lot, but I had a girlfriend every year until like 11th grade. And I was always super proud of that. And then I talked to my therapist, and she's like, "Why would a preschool boy want a girlfriend?" And then you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, okay. and for me to kind of clarify, for if it's a little vague, I was aware enough that I was a boy, and I had to be a boy and do boy things, and my only access to the girl sphere was to have a girlfriend. So I had to get me one of those right away.
Yeah.
All right, you.
Oh man.
Am I gonna win this game?
You're gonna win this game. Oh man, I think you've already won. Golly. Oh no. So like Oh, this is a super embarrassing story. But like one time one of my sister's sports bras ended up in my laundry and I put it on and I hid under the blankets and was just giddy.
Uh-huh.
And I just thought like, that's a thing that like, oh yeah, just like boys put on girls' underwear. Just like,
One of mine, I was 9 years old. My we were moving. I think it was, or was it my dad's friend was moving? Somebody was moving, I forget. But we went over to this family's house. It was just my family and their family, and we hung out. And they had a daughter that was the same age, and like we hit it off, and we were boyfriend and girlfriend for that day. That was one of my shortest relationships. But the thing I remember very distinctly from that day was going up into her room and just being like, it was just like everything was glowing. You hear the angels sing the "oh" kind of a thing, and it's just like, wow, this is amazing.
I've got two now. Thank you.
Okay.
So the one I thought of when you were going was watching the cartoons or movies or whatever, and the girl, there's a brother and a sister, and the sister has a sleepover, and they go and they like tackle the brother and give him a makeover, right? I wanted that to happen to me.
That's a very specific memory, and that was going to be my next one, but I'll just glom onto it.
Each, yeah.
My cousin came to visit, and he's 2 years older than me. My best friend next door had a sister that was a couple years older, and she had a friend over, and they stole my cousin for an hour or so and made him up, and I was so insanely jealous of that for probably about 10 years.
10 years. Ooh.
Yeah, that was a big one. I was always that one really stuck out to me.
We can share that one. Polly Pockets. So my babysitter had two girls and 3 boys. So like she had a number of kids, and one of which had Polly Pockets. And I remember playing with all of her Polly Pockets, thinking these are the coolest thing ever. And that was like, it was a girl's toy, but I was just like, which was part of the allure. It wasn't that it was like Polly Pockets, because we also had Mighty Max. Literally just like needlessly gendered toys. So like, yeah, it was, the allure was the fact that it was Polly Pocket and it was pink.
I remember a little earlier playing, the kids would kind of like play house, out in the playground. And I was always jealous that I could never, I don't know if I ever spoke up about it, but I could never play the mom or like a sister role.
Oh, okay, yeah. I didn't have that happen, but like yeah, I could get that, definitely. Maybe like a weird one or a gross one. Like tampon and like pad commercials made me jealous. And like that's when like literally every cis woman like I've spoken to is like, why are you jealous of that? It's terrible. And I'm like, I know. I am fully cognizant of the fact that this is not a fun thing for anybody.
Yeah. Oh boy. Oh, this is a tough admission, but yeah. At one point, I did go out and I actually bought some just to have them in my purse. Like, if I've ever been in a bathroom and a girl like needs a tampon or whatever, I've got one, so I can be one of the girls and be like, oh yeah, sure. Like and I don't know that. I guess that'll count as mine. I don't know if that really counts.
Sure.
Okay.
That does count as one. I'm saying it counts as one, and I'm the leader. This got me thinking stuff we talked about earlier as well, like my art school career. I was making art that was like challenging gender roles. This has another backstory to it. I don't want to sidetrack our game, but I was making artwork about gender roles and like, yeah, there's like, oh yeah, like I've always done all these like, feminine things, and like making artwork about like all of the stuff I made a spinning wheel out of metal, because like a spinning wheel for spinning yarn,
Uh-huh.
because I was doing all these crafty things, and it was just like I was like fully aware that like these hands-on like arts and crafts stuff, like that was all like woman stuff, and I was just like, but I want to do it. So I had to make an art piece. Then I made it like big rusty metal thing, and it was just like, challenging the fact that like it has to be big and heavy and manly for men to do it. I was
Uh-huh.
like, but I really love doing this. Like, so yeah.
Yeah, that was the tangent that we got on earlier that kind of
Yeah.
took us down your art career and into some of that stuff, and we can jump over to that now.
Okay.
But yeah,
That's your call.
I
Because
just
I thought if you were still having fun with this game, then like, yeah.
I just remember being in always being attracted to women that were pregnant, but then also insanely, I just thought that it was magical, and I was to the point of actually being really insanely jealous of it, that I could not get pregnant. And that was one that I don't know why that wasn't a big clue for me. Why that wasn't, that I just thought, I just always thought that I had viewed being making a kid as super magical, and it's the miracle of life, that whole thing. And so I didn't put too much stock into the fact that I was really jealous that I couldn't get pregnant. And then, again, in Erica New Girl's words, just like, yeah, but normal cis people don't feel that way.
Yes.
so so
What a
not,
wonderful segue. It's like you're a trained talk show host. So while I was at art school, I alluded to this like not 2 minutes ago. I had started dating a midwife, which is like, uh, I don't know if everybody knows what a midwife is. I'm just going to describe it. It's a person who like helps pregnant women give birth, and
mhm.
like they help them also like up to the moment, like prenatal and then neonatal, and they also do some postnatal care. So like the whole like the whole gamut of making a baby.
Yeah.
um,
See, I
up,
thought when you said midwife, it was between the start wife and the end wife, or maybe the bottom
that as
wife and the
well.
top wife. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. The top or the bottom wife, midwife, or in the middle. Um,
Right, right about there.
yeah, eye level. Eye level. That's a bad. Okay. So I learned a lot about midwifery and like pregnancy and birth and like child like pregnant woman care, maternity care. That's the word. And it was, but like I was just, it was something that I was kind of aware of in the back of my mind, but like being in close proximity to someone whose entire life was babies, making babies, like helping people make babies, like that was my entire, like that was her life, and that was just like I was so intensely jealous of that. And this was like at the time when I was at school, like I'd made that like spinning wheel piece, uh another thing in that game, it's like my, yeah, doing needlepoint and like the stands at my sister's like hockey games, like this is all stuff that I was like coping with. Like this relationship kind of spurred a lot of these questions in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
um and I was so immensely jealous that I couldn't bear a child. And I was looking it up, and there were like I was googling like male childbirth, men bearing children, like pregnancy, male pregnancy, like all of these things, and like there's like some really weird articles. But I was just like clinging to anything that I could have this like such like a specific experience, like tied to gender. And I ended up, so you'll know I was prepared for this because it's handy. Uh, I made this bronze sculpture of a pregnant man. I'm gonna bring him up closer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it looks like an Oscar. It was just like the idea is like it kind of looked like an idol, and it's solid bronze, so it weighs like a bunch. Um, and the idea being that like I'm just gonna hold it here so everyone can see it. Um, like I had like built this, like idolized this whole like idea of pregnancy, and like in the critique for this, it's like on this pedestal, it's under this like dramatic light, it's and one of the questions I got from classmates was like, do you wish you could get pregnant? like, do you want it? Like, is that something you want? And I was just like, oh, yes. Yes. No hesitation. I
You
just like
don't?
straight up just like told a group of people that like, I wish I could get pregnant. I want to get pregnant. And it was just like, I want to bear a child. And it was like, sorry, this is getting weird for people in the audience, but like, I had no idea. I didn't know I was trans. And it's just like, again, like cis people don't say shit like that. Like there's, it's just like that's
Either I need to start a
so
comedy
strange.
routine, or maybe we should pass this on to Ashley Versus for hers, Ashley Cooper. But just biting on the you might be a redneck with you might be trans
Yes.
if.
Yes. Good old Foxworthy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, that's another great memory, and I just didn't even clue in. We used to listen to Jeff Foxworthy CD in the car on our way to Florida for like some family vacation, and there's one bit that he does about the gay snake. The hith, if you step on me, I'll bite you, I swear. And it's just like, and it was just like, I did that so perfectly. Like I was just like, so like I had this effeminate person behind this facade of a straight boy. My parents, like at the time, like it was like the early mid 90s, and they're like, should we be concerned? Because like as a joke, and I was just like, oh yeah, I'm just good at this. Ding ding ding.
Little did we all
Okay.
know.
Little did we all know.
Yeah, and it's just funny that those things like that are that's why I love talking about this stuff. Is like we had no idea, nobody else realized, and it's just like, but the signs are all there. Like if only we'd had this, these definitions and this thing back then, it would have saved us all a lot of time, a lot of hardship, there's a lot of struggles throughout the whole thing.
It's like hands up if if you've ever had that daydream. Like if I had a time machine, I would go back and tell myself sooner.
Yeah. So that's a great set of questions that I've been asking as well, because a lot of Ashley stuff was time machine based. When would have you thought about that? When would you go back to, and who would you talk to? What would you say if you had the time machine to, kind of fix your whole trans story?
Fix. The problem is, I've honestly thought of this a lot. The problem with it for me is I wouldn't be where I like. If I transitioned sooner, I wouldn't be with Aaron, and I probably wouldn't be in games. Like if I could just go back and tell myself or my parents, like explain it to them so they understand, because it was like the 90s and it's probably a little different then. But have everything else turn out the same, then yeah, like they're probably like really early, because like I was a kid, I was asking questions that like, I was on the cusp of like probably getting some really weird questions to my parents. Like so, like if I could go back when I was like even like 9 or 10, and be like, hey, your kid is trans, and like you can ask them these specific questions, and they will be like, yeah, and you'll know. But
it's funny that you say that, because that's the exact age that I was thinking about as well. And then I mean, it's just such a fun exercise to go through. Like you've got to realize exactly what you said, that you wouldn't have been where you are in your life now. So the good, the bad, and the ugly, but some of the best things that you've gone through, so you can't discount that. But it's a fun exercise to figure out, like, what would that conversation be like? How would I do that? And it's interesting that we chose about the same time. I wanted to break in and say we've got Gabriela Diaz from Puerto Rico. We've reached all the way to Puerto Rico, from Canada down to Puerto Rico. So,
man, what a great audience.
There we go. Yeah. So
such a broad reach.
Yeah. We're getting there. And that totally threw me off. What else did I want to talk about?
Okay. Like what else did I write down? Oh, you did mention my counseling experience.
Yes.
That's also a fun one. Because something like that we had talked about, like wanting to make sure we kind of like bring up and answer questions around is like this idea of like it came up during my whole transition, my whole experience, my journey from finding out what gender identity disorder was. So, oh goodness. So like these were feelings that I was aware of when I was in university, part of this like Christian fellowship, like branding and trying to figure stuff out. The questions that came up while I was dating this midwife. So like after I broke up with this midwife, I dove into this Christian community. Like this is like there's a lot of like threads that follow each other around here. And I decided to seek a counselor, someone to help me like kind of process stuff because I felt like I was ready. I wasn't, but I learned that after the fact. I was like trying to force this. I was trying to force this like personal growth and this. It's like, oh yes, well, I'm ready now. I want to do this. Anywho, I went to this counselor. I sat down, told her all the stuff going on, being like, hey, this is what I kind of want to be a woman. And like explain things to her and like my feelings and everything, and she's like, oh, okay. She's like, this is new to me because this was like specifically a Christian counselor that's like has connections to this ministry group, like and offers that lens of like advice and counseling. And she's like, yo, I'll need to like do some research and you can come back in like a week. I don't remember how long it was. And I went back and she's like, she started like asking the diagnostic questions, the like, like, oh, do you feel this? Well, what about this? And you like the probing questions that you're like, okay, you're trying to like diagnose me with something.
Well, yeah, but that, just to stop you for a second, it's so funny that she's like, I gotta research this. It's just
I gotta research this.
Yeah, great textbook. That's where I wanted to go with my counseling. Is let's just read from a textbook to do this, like kind of a choose your own adventure sort of thing. It's like I could probably go do this and not waste my time with you then, if that's how we're gonna do it.
If I was more aware at the time, I would have been like, huh, are you sure about that? But time makes fools of us all. So so she's like, we're going through this and she's like, okay, well, it sounds like a lot of this sounds similar to gender identity disorder. It's like, so she was using, I don't know, DSM-5, the Diagnostic Systems Manual. Maybe she was on 4 at that point. I don't know. But that was the medical, psychological diagnosis for trans people. And there's a good amount of time where like that was what the diagnosis you needed to get like gender reassignment surgery and therapy and like hormone replacement. So like she basically straight up told me I was trans, which is like, it's kind of like not very professional to like counsel someone and like ask them questions and then straight up tell them, yo, you're trans. Like you're supposed to help them figure that out on their own. But I was thankful, and it's just like and honestly, as we were talking about before, like her reaction to the whole thing was actually pretty great. So it was like, oh yeah, like like this sounds similar to like gender identity disorder. How does that feel? Like, does that seem right to you? And like, we had a conversation about it, and I was like, so what next? She's like, well, if I'm being honest, like, she's like, there's, that's it's part of your life now. I was like, now She's like, but it's going to be something that you're dealing with, coping with, struggling with, living with, whether you transition or not, like for the rest of your life. And it was just like, she said like, oh yeah, transition, like you could transition gender, like that's something people know. I was like, oh God. She's like, you don't have to. And I was like, okay, cool. And it was just like, this was all so new to me. But she, thankfully, instead of saying like, oh yeah, you should go to conversion camp, it was like, it's literally straight up like, oh, this is a part of your life now. And she's like, it's gonna be, I was like, okay. And then I just like went away to process it and everything.
That sounds kind of wonderful. That was
my. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just to say that sounds kind of wonderful because, like, you start the story talking about she's going to pull out a textbook and read from it, and it's just like, okay, this is not going to go well. But the thing is like she was able to help you kind of. She gave you a definitive answer, which it was hard to take at the time, but it is important to again have that language and have that understanding. But it sounds like she was nice and kind about it in a way that really kind of helped you and eased you into some part of it, like say you've got some options or what have you. I
Yeah.
felt that was one of the key moments for me in my transition, was when I realized that this was part of me that wasn't going to change, that I wasn't going to be able to get rid of. And that took a
Hmm.
lot of the pressure off me to understand it, to figure it out and try and get rid of it. If it's just like, okay, this is just something that is, then it's less important what it is and more important like how you're going to deal with it. And that moment
Yeah.
for me was one of the big moments.
I will say, boy, howdy, did I try to get rid of it. But I fought it. I fought for a while. So like that was the first counselor experience I had. And then I ended up like this was when I was a student, part of this group, and then after that I like did an internship with them, and I was like an employee of theirs. And then there was another counselor that I could go to after I moved to London, Ontario. Um,
No
and
relation to
this
London.
counselor was hmm?
So no relation to real London.
No relation. Yeah. Okay. None at all. But like the other counselor that I went to was just a completely different story in terms of like their approach to things. Because the first lady was like, "Oh yeah, like this is what you got," and just like I can help you deal with it. I don't know what you want to do. She's like, "It's up to you." It's just like this is it's going to be a part of your life now, which is just like, and honestly, like she was right. It is a part of my life now. I will say we kind of brushed over it pretty quickly, but this idea of like gender identity disorder is like it's not a great, it's not a good, it's a bad.
Mm-hmm.
I just like straight up like it's labeled as a disorder, right? This idea that like my gender identity is a disorder. It's like I have this, something is wrong with me that uh, you know I experience gender dysphoria.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like honestly, it's the terminology is terrible.
Yeah.
That was the time, and I think they're getting better at it. Like the newest diagnostic systems manual has changed some of their language around things and improved things, and things are getting better for us. So like I will say, in all honesty, I was diagnosed with gender dysphoria. Like that's the way I look at it now.
Yeah.
But I didn't have that language, right? So as I
No,
mentioned, I was coming out as someone with gender identity disorder
and
for the longest time. Go
that's
ahead.
where they get the fuel for that fire behind
Yeah,
the conversion therapy, and a lot
yeah,
of the negative stigma behind it is like, oh, you have a disorder. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make you a bad person per se, but you still have a
yeah,
disorder, and it's something that needs to be fixed. And in our the way we look at Western medicine, if you have a disorder, it can be fixed either with medication or
exactly.
shock therapy or something. There is a fix for it because it's a disorder, and we're supposed to fix things. And that's
Yeah,
that's kind of one of the key problems right there, is once you label it something like that, then you've it's automatically set as a negative, and there's no way to change that. So I'm glad that,
yeah,
yeah, that those, I think it's WHO. I think I read not too long ago that they had changed that definition, or changed that terminology.
mm,
So we're making a little bit
yeah,
of
and that's
progress.
that's awesome. And it's like the idea is that like the reason I personally like feel like it's gender dysphoria is like the diagnosis. Like the dysphoria is the thing you want to get rid of, not
Mm-hmm.
the identity, right?
Yes.
Like you can change your gender identity. Like your gender identity is like the disorder. Yeah, it's this weird like, oh, it's you're like given gender at birth is incongruous with the psychological gender in your mind. And it's like, yes, but like when you say it like that, it's like, we must fix the brain part. It's
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
no, no,
Well, and
we must mitigate the dysphoria.
the big issue that I have, and it sounds like up at least until this time where you had this counselor that helped you kind of
Hmm.
identify this, I even once I identified as trans, I still struggled with it, because I'm like, well, I'm not truly trans, because the definition,
Yes.
again, the textbook definition of trans is somebody that had gender dysphoria their whole life. They always felt like they were in the wrong body, and I
Yeah.
never felt like I was in the wrong body per se. When we talked earlier about how I had these things where like it didn't feel right, I didn't understand things, but I didn't attribute that to like hating my body and I'm in the wrong body.
Yeah.
But then what really helped me was realizing that the opposite is also true, and affirming for being truly trans is gender euphoria, where you put on that dress and it makes you cry because it feels so wonderful, and you're like and it it lights up that thing where you're like, yes, this makes sense finally. And so you have to put as much value in gender euphoria, where as you allow yourself to try these things out, you feel that feeling, you're like, okay, yeah, I really am trans.
Yeah, and there's like a lot of ways that I could never like, I didn't know any differently than the gender dysphoria that I might have been experiencing, might not have been, because similar to what you were saying, like I don't think I fit that, because like I had like dysphoric moments, but it was also just like it wasn't really like I was constantly dysphoric about my body. I was just yearning for like this womanhood. And like, but at the same time, like it's literally different for everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. So like, not having the language for it with my next counselor, that was bad. Like, it's just like we were talking about it earlier. It's like this, not having the language really hurt me, because it was like I met this counselor and it was like, oh, so like explain to me what's going on. I was like, well, I want to be a woman. I have gender identity disorder, and that's what And he was like, well, I've counseled a lot of people with this, and I honestly can't recall if he had done the like, yes, that was something I struggled with myself, and instead I fought through it, and now we're here. And it's like, oh, another red flag, because like some of the most toxic people I've encountered are the people that tend to say, I used to feel that way and I got over it. And I was just like, did you? Because you seem kind of angry about it. But like
I had to stuff it down, so I'm gonna make you do it too.
Yeah, right. But he literally like asked me to explain to me why, like, what is it about being a woman that attracts you? Like, why do you want to be a woman? I was like shit, dude, I don't have the words for this. Like, and it's like, well, you're sitting there, you don't understand the language you need, you don't understand this like deep-seated yearning. And like I explained, like I just like, it's this like, in my heart there's this yearning to be a woman. Like I can't explain it beyond that.
Yeah,
it's
and
like,
you couldn't go
I wish I could have.
You couldn't go all Yoda on him and tell him, no, there is no why.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was still not aware enough. Like I still didn't know that there wasn't a why. And I was just like, in my heart, the common Christian parlance, in my heart of hearts, I believe it to be true. But like it came down to like, oh yeah, well like I like women's clothes. I just wish I could wear women's clothes. And it's like, oh, so like, are you a cross dresser? And it's like, well, no, but what? And then it was like, well, why don't you like men's clothes? And it was like this like weird cyclical logic. Like, well, you like women's clothes better because you think like you look at them and that makes you aroused. And it's like, and I was like, well, I see women and I like, I feel like attraction, but I also feel hot jealousy. And then it was just like this like weird, like trying to get me to like double think and like, oh yeah, but like think about the attraction, but not about the jealousy. It's like, what? And then it's like, oh, well, like you want to look, you see this and like you want to wear the like women's clothes because you're attracted to the women. It's like, no, it's different than that. It's like, well, maybe you'd feel better in your clothes if you like, where you were more active and you were in better shape and you looked better in your clothes. And I was like,
oh, shaming,
what?
That's good.
So like, try losing some weight and like, baby, you'll feel better. And I was just like, what? Did you just tell me to lose some weight to get rid of my gender dysphoria? Like, hindsight, like maybe that's where I would go back. You know what? Yeah, I'm changing my time machine story. That's where I would go back. I'd be like, poof, right into that room. Yo, shut the fuck up.
Real quick, Mira Dubs.
Mira Dubs
has to bail. She's saying goodbye.
Oh, she's leaving.
Yeah. Yeah, she's been here. She said like you're her favorite and she loves you and all the good stuff. That was a long time ago, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
Well,
And now she's leaving.
you're no longer here, I miss you and I love you, Meritopta.
Um. So yeah. It's just unfortunate that we run into those people, and like you said, I feel like some of the closeted people are the worst, or the ones that have tried to fight it themselves.
J.K. Rowling.
But that's a whole nother one. Uh, oh man, it's on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember what my response was. It to you telling me that story earlier about oh yeah, when he's talking about the clothes, and it's just like, well, maybe if the clothes fit you better, if you were in better shape or whatever, and that triggers that memory in myself, where when I started to dress more fully as a woman, when I was just kind of getting into it, and I'm like, okay, maybe this isn't a fetish for women's panties, because
Yes.
I now have bras, and now that I have that, I want pants. I don't understand why that is,
I want
because
pants, yes.
yeah, and but again, like I couldn't wear women's pants, so I would go and I would shop and I would buy them, and I'd buy them in like, 5, 8 sizes too big for what I wear now, because I would buy them so that they fit like guys' clothes, or kind of close, so that they blended in. And it was just this weird thing when I was talking to my counselor early about this, as I was trying, she was trying to help me figure out what was going on, and she would say similar things of like, well, why not wear a pink men's shirt? And it was just funny that wearing these big floppy, stupid, horribly fitting women's clothes still felt so much better for me than wearing tight men's pants, or like a pink men's shirt or something like that. It's like, I don't understand this, but I just know that this feels so much better, and I want to do more of that. And holy crap, does that scare the shit out of me, because
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know what this is. I'm not ready for this.
Yeah. So like we talked about it before, and I'm just gonna like come straight out and say it. Like, this person was basically framing my my identity as a trans person, framing it as like a sexual deviance,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was like, oh, this just gets you off. And I was like, no, it's actually very different than that. it's I'm not doing this to get my jollies. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't, and it's like just not understand. Like, it's this approach that like overtly sexualizing this like transition. It's like, fuck's sakes, like it's so much more than that. There's so much more to it than this idea of like, yeah, it's like don't sexualize my identity.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I don't know how to say it other than
Yeah,
that. Like,
and some of these things that he was saying are kind of the negative things that always spun in my brain. And I still struggle with it, and I brought it up on the Transgender Show recently. I asked a question like, what do y'all feel about the fact that when I think about fully transitioning, like there is a turn on aspect that there is a sexual turn on to that, and
yes.
what my brain likes to use that as evidence that it is just a fetish, and it's stupid, and like it's just me being that sexual deviant. I didn't need a counselor to tell me that, because like that was what was already spinning in my brain. So
Yes. I like where you're going with this. So this is something we talked about, and I 100% like. So this was our pre-show warm-up, that our conversation. I forgot about this, and I'm so glad you brought it back up. So like this is something I struggled with like deeply, right? This like am I doing this just because it arouses me? Like it was like, because it was something that like part of my experience, like as I was like trying things, like you know, I didn't talk much about it. Like I put that dress on and I cried, but it was also kind of arousing. Like this, so like, and so this is something I struggled with. Like because like, am I actually trans, or am I just like,
a
am I
horny freak,
just
yeah.
someone that like,
A horny freak,
yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, right. Like, and coming from the the Christian side of things, where like a lot of people were telling me I was a horny freak. You start to believe it. And like as I started getting more involved, like started transitioning more, and like it wasn't until like after I had started hormones and started the process, which was like early 2017, like 2 years ago. Like this is, I started like being aware of my identity as a trans person like 2011. So there was like a good 5 or 6 year chunk where I was like, I have gender identity disorder and I'm gonna fight this. And I like, obviously I lost, but like this, like it wasn't until like after I had started going through and being aware of this and like learning about my own identity and like learning about myself that like I realized that like there I'm not alone in that worry and that thought as a trans person, and like my identity as a trans woman is not like invalidated by those feelings. And I mentioned to you earlier, like there was a study that like I'm gonna phrase this right now. It's like it was proven like scientifically debunked, like it was just garbage science. But it was studying that like this idea of like, oh, like do trans people find arousal in the idea of themselves as a woman? And it was just like this like the very like I'm at the point now in my life where like the premise of it is kind of offensive to me. But at the time I found this article because it was a term that someone had like used, and like it was someone saying like, hey, TERFs will be calling you this, don't let it get you down. And I looked up the term, linked to this article, and it got me down, knowing that someone told me not to let it get me down. So that's why I'm sharing this with everybody. The term is autogynephile, which is like it big pseudoscience. It makes it sound more legitimate. It means that like you find sexual arousal in the thought of yourself as a woman, as the thought of yourself like as a woman. And it's just like, on the face of it, I saw this and I was like, oh God, this is just like framing my identity that I've been, like realizing and growing into for like years now. Like it's invalidating it as just like a kink.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with kinks, but as like this is like it literally rocked my world to be like, oh my God, this is like my entire identity is this. Like it's just this like sexual arousal. But like the more I started reading this, like it's a scientific paper, so it's a little bit dense. And I started reading criticisms of it and realizing that like, okay, so there's so many problems with this. So if you ever find it, like you can look it up, read the criticisms, make sure you read the criticisms, because it's like if you're not a scientific minded person, you might not catch into like what's wrong with it, and I didn't either. But it's like the entire study was set up to like to frame some weird sexual deviancy in trans women. They didn't even ask the same questions to cis women, and they didn't come up with a term for men, cis men, trans men. Like they didn't come up with an analogous term for being aroused at the thought of being a man with a penis, right? So it was just like it was just literally set up to disprove the validity of trans women. So like I'm just getting all passionate and boldened and fiery, but it's like cisgendered women meet the exact same requirements. Like there's like the majority of cis women, I don't know the exact numbers, also end up being categorized by this study as someone who's aroused at the thought of themselves as a woman. And just like very frankly put it, like I was just like so relieved to read that, because I was just like I was questioning everything about me. As this like fetish, as this kink, as this thing, like do I just do this because it gets me horny? And like I will warn anyone now who's about to start hormones, there's a good chance that you will lose your sex drive for a while. So like, keep that in mind. So like I don't even do it to get horny, because I don't get horny anymore. But that's me. Weird aside.
Well,
but like
it's just so hard to fight those external voices and those external things that we come across and that people say to us, because we have so many doubts within ourselves and so many of those similar negative voices within our own heads. So it's so easy to fall into that trap.
Yes, I was falling into that trap, and I was like, I had to like unlearn transphobia that I had like been living my life as a trans person. There were still thoughts, and I was sticking to these feelings and like fighting these feelings that I like because I was worried it, it's just like I was being a transphobe. Like Jesus, it was so heavy. But like lingerie is a thing. Like this is like the easiest way to like debunk this whole idea of like lingerie is a thing. Women don't just buy lingerie to like turn men on. They buy lingerie because they like feeling sexy.
Mm-hmm. And it turns them on, yeah.
Yeah. Like that's it right there. Like that, this idea that like you're just doing this because it turns you on. It's like well, women get turned on at the thought of being sexy women too.
Well, and that's sort of so like I said, I bring that up because it's still sort of an issue for me. I'm still kind of fighting against that because that voice was so negative and so strong for so long. But I have noticed that as I really give in to this identity and I explore it and I try some of these things and I buy sexy lingerie or whatever and I wear it under a great dress, like it does turn me on. But I haven't started hormones yet. So I know it's apples to apples comparison. Like it's a different type of arousal. Like
yes,
it's arousing in a completely different way once you allow yourself to really get into it fully and honestly. It does feel different. So that it's just like, okay, yeah, it's not like this weird freak thing, but just the fact that it's still that there is still some of it. Like it's hard. Those internal voices are hard.
Yes, there's a lot of like relearning and like consciously like I just distracted myself with the hair. Consciously like thinking and rethinking the way you think of yourself.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's a lot of work and not just the like physical like oh you have to physically change your appearance. It's also like a lot of work rethinking the like structures of identity you've built in your life. And like this whole like there's a lot of things like things out there like we're talking about now like that frame us like oh you're just doing like you're just a a pervert, you're just a sexual deviant, you're just doing this because it gets you off, gets you horny. It's like God no, like there are so many easier ways to get horny than this.
Yeah. The aforementioned porn and
yes,
women
go hang out with your high school buddies in a hotel room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's just so funny, and that's another thing that I hope we get to with this show is like we allow walls to be built, and then we also build them ourselves within our minds towards our growth and our acceptance of ourselves. We build up these structures against that, and it's really like you said, it's part of the relearning where we have to learn to tear that down within ourselves to allow us to be what we're going to be.
Yeah,
Maddie,
that's huge.
Maddie Two Spirit. I'm not sure if you're familiar with. She just recently changed her name to just Hey Maddie. She's another streamer on Twitch. But she said,
Maddie.
She said, your smile is infectious.
Oh, damn. I have a lot of weird faces that I make. So it's like, I'm realizing it now more than I usually do because like I normally when I'm streaming, I'll be playing games and I'll be like watching the screen. But now I'm like looking at my camcorder, which has like a little like screen on it. And I'm just like watching my face, just like, So I'm glad my smile is good because like I make a lot of other faces too. I'm bad at taking compliments, Maddie.
She asked, "Have you seen the movie, the documentary Disclosure?" I think I heard about it recently, but I haven't seen it.
I've heard good things about it. I've heard tough things about it. I'm not sure. I cry. I cry. I cry a lot in movies. Movies affect me. We watched Hamilton and I bawled. I sobbed so hard. So like going into something knowing it's going to be emotionally hard is very difficult for me. But I'm sorry I can't talk more about it. I do need to watch it just so I can like be able to be a part of the discourse on this.
What's the basis of that one? I haven't seen it either.
Hamilton or Disclosure?
Disclosure.
I don't actually know, but I know it's centered around trans narratives.
Okay, yeah, Maddie, give us an indication in the chat. One series that I watched and I really did like was Her Story on YouTube, and
Oh, okay.
I believe it was all around maybe a small trans group or particularly one trans woman.
I'm gonna
I'm
write
forgetting a
this
little bit of the
down.
specifics, but that was a nice little series, and it was you know not it was just about her life, and her being trans was part of it, but it wasn't like it didn't seem like it was, oh, this is what it's like to be trans, sort of like
Yeah.
unfortunately what this show is, but it's just one of those things where it's like it was nice because it included
Mhm.
us in it in a way that wasn't hyper focused on it, and I really enjoyed that. It was a fun little series, and I think it might be like somewhere between 2 and 3 hours for the whole series. Like it's quick, but it's a great little watch.
I had literally just had like an epiphany. So when you were talking about like Her Story and like that reminded me like when I started like coming out to people and started slowly like starting my transition, I bought a book or two. Like I'd bought some books that like about by trans women about their experience, and I still haven't read them because I've been afraid that I will read them and my experience will somehow be invalidated and
Yes.
make me feel not trans enough. And I just like did not realize that until right now.
Hmm.
This idea that like I've been avoiding other trans narratives because I don't want to see it and think like, well shit, that's not my story. So it's like, and I've been saying, I've been preaching but that like everyone's transition is different. So
Yes.
like why don't I listen to what I've been saying and like
Hmm.
actually realize that,
It's those bad narratives that we have in our it's that relearning that we have to do, because
yeah,
yeah we can
like
and that's kind of like another thing. Like I love doing this because they always say the way to learn something is to teach it. That's the best way. And so like I kind of feel
I
that
get
in
that.
this. The more you talk about, hey, it's okay for you to be trans, and it's like, well, then it must be
But
okay
is it
for me
okay
to be
for me to be
trans. Yeah.
trans? Oh, 10 out of 10, $1 million question. Yes, it's okay for me to be trans.
Peach wants us to do a watch party for the next stream. So yeah, we should watch
Which one? Disclosure or Her Story?
just yeah, all kinds of different trans narrative stuff, and you know talk
I am
about it and
down.
affirm it. I love it. I wonder if we could do that. I wonder, like, I don't know, because YouTube and Twitch are cracking down on that kind of stuff
Oh
really hard. I
yeah.
wonder where the copyright stuff falls for those little kind of indie movies. I'll
I
have to
mean,
look into that.
we could like maybe not stream it, but like do a watch together,
Yeah.
like Netflix watch together, but like also just like ha- kind of like doesn't Ari do it that way? Like okay, she does the Amazon Prime stream party, but like you could just like have the camera on you and just like you watching a screen over there and just like eating popcorn. It's like, wow, did you see that? It'd be good.
Yeah.
It'd be fine.
Yeah.
I'd watch
Yeah.
that.
I
I'd
wonder.
watch you watch something.
Oh, that's the creepiest. I've actually seen that stream before. There are streams out there where people don't interact with the audience and they just kind of sit there, like they're super creepy.
God, do I
Um,
do that? Please tell me I don't do that on my stream.
uh, Drop that in the chat now, everyone. Um, yeah, it's a bummer. There was something that when when we kind of were talking about that, it triggered something else for the when you realize you were a transgender game, and it went out of my brain as soon as it went in. Um,
Oh, goodness. Yeah, the like things that you should have realized meant you're a transgender.
hmm Well, like little
Ugh.
things, like I had this, I did write a couple little notes, and there was one that we didn't talk about, but realizing that the memories that you have from your childhood, the ones that stand out, and the reason they're still in your brain, and you don't really quite realize how important they are until much later in life, and you put these pieces together. Like one that always stood out that I didn't think meant anything, until you reframe it. I was really proud in sixth grade, fifth grade, that a choir teacher was praising me for being a soprano or being one of the few sopranos or something along the lines of that. I sung well like a girl, and I was so freaking proud of that.
Oh, yeah. It's just like constantly there's gonna like so many times when I just like look back and like, oh yeah, like when I was in plays and like getting into like or doing acting, drama, whatever, and just like hearing about like, oh, the men would even play the women's parts, and I was just like, oh,
Oh, you can.
they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what
And
Erica got to do a lot of that. Erica, new girl, she got to do a lot of that in
yes,
theater, and
I
it's like,
remember.
yeah.
Yeah, and like I don't know if other people remember like the growing up the Drew Carey show. Anyone else watch that? I loved that
Cleveland
show.
rocks.
Oh yeah, and like there were. Oh, sorry, just punching my microphone. Boom! Hey everybody, wake up. So like
We're at the 2 hour mark. Who's asleep? Like, wake up, wake up.
oh my goodness, we're killing it. Going for a marathon. See y'all in the morning. But like
Morning for
I
a
was
lot of
watching
them,
like
I think.
sorry.
I think it's morning for a lot of our viewers already. You know, the
Oh yeah.
Canadian.
Oh, it's morning for me.
Is it? Okay.
Oops. But like watched that show all the time and I loved it. But like there were a lot of things that it did that honestly I kind of think were progressive for the time. And like like the idea of like gender came up often and like it was never really. So like Drew's brother was a cross-dresser. Like that was
Mm-hmm.
like how they
That's
framed
right.
him and like he lived his life as a woman and like went to work and like that was just kind of like accepted.
Uh-huh.
Like it was the point of some like there were some conversations they had and I don't remember how they went, but for me as a young trans person it's just like, oh,
Interesting.
like
Yeah,
it is possible to do this. And there were
I
episodes yeah, there's one episode where like I was like Lewis, I forget their names.
mm-hmm.
Oswald worked at the like weird medical research place and Lewis got breast implants to see what like how it would affect him psychologically and I was just like it's just like all of these things some of these topics like I never clued in obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But like
it's funny looking back at some of those and like yeah,
yeah.
some of those things like were but then like seeing the brother as a cross-dresser and out in public, like I think at that time that stuff was still too much for me. Like I that kind of repelled me a bit. I was kind
Okay.
of I think I was afraid of that and so like I couldn't get on board of that. And it's funny
Okay.
because
Yeah.
like one of my in high school, one of my favorite movies, that same group of friends on a different trip, Ace Ventura had just come out, and so we watched it as much as it was on, and like I said, it hadn't just come out. I guess it had come out the year before, and it was like showing on TV and stuff, and we would quote it constantly and all of
Oh
that.
yeah.
And I absolutely loved that movie. It was hilarious, and yet looking back now, it's like that's a pretty damn transgender shaming movie.
Yeah. And like I remember as a kid growing up and liking it. Like, I thought it was funny. Jim Carrey's a funny person.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'm pretty sure now if you talk to him he'd be like, yeah, that was bad. But like it like fumfering. You transitioned when you were like you're starting your transition when you're ready,
Yeah.
right? Like I honestly like without some time machine to like gift myself with the foresight, like I don't like. There's a lot of this like, oh, I wish I had transitioned sooner, but like at this like honestly, I was not ready before I started.
Yeah.
I am very aware that I was not ready. And so like there's always the like coulda, woulda, shoulda, but like would you actually have? Like I would not have transitioned any sooner than I did.
Yeah.
Because it was something that's terrifying to me and like I was not ready to accept it. And like, we're doing this like things that should have tipped me off, but it was like, really?
Yeah, but then the other side of it is like, up until the last year, 2 years, probably about 2 years ago, anything that had any kind of permanence to it freaked me the hell out. Like getting laser hair removal.
Yeah.
which is something that I desperately want now. And I'm like
Yeah.
4 sessions in, but 2 years ago scared the living bejesus out of me. It really terrified me. And so
It's a huge change,
Mhm.
right? And
Well, yeah,
like
and
it's a huge change, and the idea of permanence, like I understand it. Yeah, sorry. I'm
but
not
you know,
trying to like
and
step on
it
your toes.
speaks again to that lack of self-acceptance. Like the reason I was afraid of it was because like, but what if I'm not truly trans and I want to at some point reverse this and I want to go back to being a guy? Like, you know, I can't
Yeah.
remove that option. That's scary. And so
Yeah.
like
What if I'm not trans enough?
Mhm.
Yeah. That's
Stupid.
yeah, like I mean we can say that now, but like I've fought with that really hard. And like so for me, like that really came up really just thrust right to the forefront when I was doing like going through my like paperwork list of stuff that I had to fill out to do gender affirming surgery, bottom surgery. Thankfully, like you know, I will sing Canada's healthcare praises endlessly for this because it's covered. Bottom surgery is covered. Top surgery, facial surgery, like you know, hair removal. That's all considered elective, and that's stuff you pay for yourself, which is just
Completely,
like
huh?
really.
No.
But you know, I can get a vagina. So, um,
Just handing them out.
but like they're handing them out, you know, it's like, hey, you get one.
You get a vagina.
You get
You get a
one.
vagina.
You get one.
I don't know why that
Same
Oprah
wavelength.
thing is
Perfect.
just so big. I say that all the time now. I don't know.
Oh yeah, me too. Um, but like, uh, sorry, still laughing at my own jokes. Um, but like, to fill this stuff out, to go through the process of getting this approved for funding, meant I needed healthcare, like approval by healthcare providers. One of which was my endocrinologist, and it's like I've been seeing this doctor for more than a year now, and like he's like, yes, I'm obviously just going to approve this and sign it. But they also needed a second, so I had to go to someone who was like a therapist, and like they do this often. And
Okay.
very thankfully, like it was a trans man who had gone through this process a number of times before, and you know, just like he was just like, yes, this is. He's like, he warned me. He's like, I am sorry. This sucks that you have to do this, but like this is the way it is. And like he's like, if you need, you know, only share as much as you want to share. Like, and ask me my whole like my whole, you know, history, my whole childhood, and like, when did you first have these thoughts? And like basically this interview, like this show, but like in a lot more clinical way. And the whole time, it was just like it was like I was just sitting there like, am I trans enough? And like, how much do I have to tell this person? Do I have to tell them like the like weird sexual fantasy shit that I did when I was like, you know, like going through puberty and like trying to figure this stuff out? Like,
Yeah, you need the trans meter on the screen where it's just
yeah,
like you've gotten into
right.
the green and then now you're starting to dip back into the yellow and it's just like
And it was in a lot of ways it was very difficult. But like at the same time, like I just like he's asking me all these questions. I'm like, okay, I just gotta level with you. Like, I honestly feel like my entire identity as a trans person is like being questioned. Like, I am sitting here, like, am I trans enough to go through this? Like, what what is the point? Like, what do you need out of this? And he's like, oh, he's like, I am being thorough because I don't want this to come back to you. He's like, I don't want this to get denied in any way possible. He's like, so I'm putting down everything you're saying, and I want this to be as, you know, thorough as possible to give you obviously like the best chance to get this funding. He's like,
wow.
9 times like 99,999 out of 100, like this goes through, and it's like, you know, but he's like, so he's like, this is not, there's no like trans enough. He's just like, I just want this to be very clear that you have experienced dysphoria. You are a trans person. You are aware of the like risks of this procedure, and you have support systems in place. And I was just like, oh, I got that. He's like, yeah, I know. But it was
I
like,
just need to write it down and then you're good.
yeah, like I was at the point where I was like, I'd been like, you know, seeing an endocrinologist for years.
Oh, okay.
I'd been living full time as a woman for years
With hormones even.
with hormones. I got boobs. Yay. And I'm literally talking to this person, and I just like suddenly it's like I'm doubting, am I trans enough? Because that's like literally like that's a question we get faced, like we face every day in a lot of ways. It's like because we constantly have to like we had to fight with our identity to get here in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's like this idea that like God, like you've questioned literally your entire life to get to this point, and it's just like
Let's
so
just rehash
you're
all of that
worried
real
that someone's
quick.
just gonna take it away and like no,
Yeah.
you're not trans enough. It's mine now, and you're just like oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's scary. It's very scary.
it is. But like yes, you are trans enough. Like yes, fucking obviously.
Even if they say that you're not, like, yeah.
Yeah, fuck
Honor
them. What do
yourself.
they know?
So Maddie asks, what was one thing when you first transitioned that really validated you as a trans woman?
Ooh, okay. Validated me as a trans woman. Something like earlier on that's coming to mind. It's like so like it's just this weird timeline of my life. I started coming out to people publicly when I started applying for jobs in games.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a job. And I was just like, I was at that point where like I had been dressing femme, wearing women's clothes, like putting on makeup, like while I was in school, and it was just like it was like snap, like I am wearing makeup now, and there was like no two ways about it. Like I just started going to class in makeup, and like I wear a lot of the same clothes, but like, anywho, I got all kinds of weird looks and harassment on the street. So I was getting like really combative. So I was like in these interviews, I'm like, I am trans. Is that a problem? And they're like, no. And like so I started transitioning basically as I got this job that I have like at the company I'm at now. So these people had literally have seen like my coworkers have seen my transition from the start, and like so it, honestly, really validating me and my identity was that like the support I got from work, from my coworkers, but also like when I my manager at the time, her and I are like really close now.
Mm-hmm.
But like we would go for lunch and we would go and talk and we would just like chat often. And I remember talking to her. She's like, "I thought you've been transitioning for years," and I was like, "No, I started like basically like when I didn't start hormones before I got to work at Ubisoft. Like I started transitioning when you hired me." She's like, "Oh my God, you're doing so great." Right? Like that was one of those moments where it's like, "Oh damn, I'm doing this pretty good then." Um,
Nice.
yes, nailed it. Got the approval of these cis people.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Um, so like that was a big moment for me. It's honestly just like realizing that like apparently I look like I'm doing it gracefully.
I was surprised when I started doing it full time that just how wonderful it felt to be called Miss or Ma'am. Just
Oh
like
boy, yes.
I was not prepared for like the butterflies that would give me.
That's good. I'm really happy to hear that.
Mm.
And honestly, like pronouns for me are strange. So I'm like I'm glad you have that experience. Like I'm glad you like it's not that I have negative experiences with pronouns. It's like
Mm.
I'm in this weird point where it's like I get upset when people he me, he
Mm-hmm.
him. I don't I that upsets me. And it's to the point where it's like when people say they, I'm like, what? You're too afraid to say she, and like, but then when people say she, sometimes they're just like, yeah, okay. But it's like I don't even like what the fuck do I even want? Anywho, so it's like
Yeah.
I'll even like I misgender myself in my head all the time. Like there's this like sorry, it's just like such a wild tangent, but I'm just expressing this so that other people that might share the same experience know that they're not friggin'
Exactly.
alone and they're still valid as trans people. So like reading through Twitter and it's just like, oh, like men are terrible, like men do this, and I'm like, hey, I'm not. Wait a minute, right? This is like,
Uh-huh.
so it's like in a lot of ways I still like guttural reaction, like my brain's still in some ways just like deep down in the like really dumb brain parts the reactionary stuff like see me as like or used to being used to being a man, used to
Yeah.
defending men as people that aren't shitty, and it's just like, yeah.
Well,
I
I'm
don't
watching
know.
my current binge right now is Big Bang Theory. I never watched it when it was on or when it was really popular. Like I saw little bits, but it never really hooked me. And so I've been
Mm.
going through it this year, and I love the show, but again, one of those voices that kind of contradicts my validity as a trans woman is I'm watching the show, and I kind of take a step back and think I'm like, do I feel like I identify more with the guys in the show than with the women. And I mean, there's a couple parts that one, I'm a big nerd and I'm into a lot of the stuff that the guys are, the Star Wars, Star Trek, all of that kind of stuff. Um, but it's just like, yeah, I just wonder how much of that is the programming and all of that, because I haven't had enough of the girly experiences. I didn't have a sister growing up to like teach me all the stuff and all of that. I've been kind of doing it on my own. So
Yeah,
I
and
see how
like
much more point in that.
yeah, sorry, I hope I didn't step on your toes on that one. I like, okay, cool. I fully understand, and like the way I try to look at it is like I was a I was living as a man, like as a he him male, rah rah, I'm a dude for like 27 years or something like that. Like that was my experience for that much of my life. So spoiler, I started transitioning at 27. So like a lot of like a lot of the way I think and the way I see myself is still like it's still shifting slowly away from that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I dead named myself in an introduction to like one of my managers when I switched projects and like under a new team, and I was just like, hi, I'm Ian, Buck, Anna. And like I'm all right with my dead name. Like it doesn't get me upset, but I understand some people it does. But like, right, like, you fucking bonehead. And at the same time, like, yeah, like watching Big Bang Theory, I don't know how far you are. Like I'm not sure what part you're
I think
at.
I'm about season 6. So
Okay, season
uh,
6, Bernadette and Howard are a thing, right?
yeah, she's pregnant.
Okay, yeah, you're way up there. So like,
Sheldon and Amy broke up and now they're back together. I can't remember if they're
yeah,
engaged or not, but
okay. Like that's the show itself is like kind of it's kind of tricky for me sometimes because like it as a nerd it's just kind of like reducing like nerds to like these like really hyper distilled super like yes, this is all they care about, but like
mm-hmm.
really, come
Yeah,
on.
and that's kind of going on
But
in the
just for the
chat
sake
right
of
now.
comedy.
My friend is saying that the women in the show kind of suck, and it's like they are kind of hyper caricatured and
Flat.
a little flat and really kind of stuck in things. I've loved watching Penny's growth and
Yeah.
expansion into kind of the nerd realm, but like my friend is saying, it's always as a punchline, and yeah, they're
Yeah.
not really characters you can identify with. I mean, Bernadette is awesome and beautiful, but she's purposely like annoying and naggy, and
Yeah. To be like the like Howard clearly is just married to her because she's like his mother in a comedic kind of way, and like uh, it's I yeah, there's a lot of that going on. Like there, so I was kind of thinking that as well when you were like, oh yeah, like I identify with the men in that show. It's like, yeah, because they're more fleshed out as characters.
yeah,
Because the women just exist as foils to the men,
yeah,
and it's just
just
like
yeah.
well, yeah, but
As
like
yeah, like you said, like as punchline setups for the guys, so that
yeah,
yeah, for them to.
yeah. So like I also just like it's just so unfeasible that anyone like that. And there's also the like going back and watching older episodes that are on TV, like Bernadette's character changes so fundamentally from the beginning of the show to where
Mm.
like where you are now or anywhere beyond that, because like in the beginning she's like super daft. It's like, oh, I like Howard, he seems cute, and it's just like, and then now she's just like this basically just like tough as nails battle axe of a woman, but like it's just like this like huge fundamental change just to like make it so that like Oh yeah, she had to be like that to fall for Howard because he's a really creepy dude.
Yeah.
Like really creepy dude.
Well,
And
yeah,
like
I was just thinking about his transition through the series today, and then we'll probably get off of that because now we're getting super tangential and off the
oh
transgender
yeah,
thing.
we're talking about pop culture now.
But yeah, he went from being just a super crazy, creepy, over sexualized a-hole to
Yes.
this more typical husband guy that's like kind of he went from being this creepy, over sexualized guy to this like worthless,
Yeah, lazy
lazy,
oaf.
yeah, and like
So,
they're kind of unrelated, and it's just kind of weird to see that he made that transition. But yeah, um, I guess it's just evidence, going back to the fact that it's a show written by guys. I was thinking about the fact that
yeah.
it's disappointing the actress, the Penny character. Like they have to write that, they have to cast that as an attractive woman that's not nerdy. So your typical like attractive pretty woman, and it's just sad that was the character. That's how she was able to get that job, is just because she's hot, because like they had to play that joke out of like the nerd falls in love with her and should not have her, and there's she's out of his league, that whole thing. And it was just I'm getting another tangent, but it was just something that struck me as like it's sad that was how she got the role, and how limited and sexist that is.
Yeah, there's a lot of tropes that they stuck to that maybe they shouldn't have stuck to.
Sorry, I thought I could just throw my phone across the room and then just ignore the alarm when it was going off. I don't know if you guys could hear it on here. But
I
I'm just
couldn't
like,
on my end.
probably not, because it was too far away from my mic. But I'm just like, oh, that's gonna drive me nuts. So I had to turn it
Annoying
on.
for you, yes. Cool.
So we're going really long. I really appreciate you guys hanging out. Let's start towards wrapping up.
Okay, cool.
What has your experience been in the video game industry as a trans person? Was your Ubisoft job your first job in the industry, or did you have more experience with that? So do you have like a before and after?
So, yeah, I just need to like, obviously, there's like, NDA stuff that I don't know how familiar people are. So like, there's some things I can't talk about in terms of like my projects and stuff like that. So I just want to be super clear. So if I seem like I'm being evasive or not answering questions fully, like just because I'm not sure how truthfully, transparently I can answer these questions, but I'll do my best. So I went to school for game design. Don't remember the year. Won't remember the year. Probably 2015. I got a job with a smaller independent company that was making like educational games.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they weren't even making educational games. They were an online language learning school, speaking like French as a second language, or French as an additional language.
Okay.
And so I was trying to help them make gamify, which is just like a buzzword in the games industry. It's like turn their learning into fun, make games out of it, and like try to get student engagement up. And like they wanted me to make. I'm just gonna just summarize as best I can. They wanted me to make a massively multiplayer online learning campus. So like they wanted a play like people could like World of Warcraft. They wanted World of Warcraft to teach people French. It's like you connect to this. You're in this world with like hundreds of other students. You can play games with them. You can meet your tutors. You can have all this classroom experience. So I had to like design the world and like make a bunch of mini games and like program a prototype with a small team. And like this is like my first project. I was still technically in school when this came into me, and it was just like so much work.
That's a massive project. It's kind of a great idea.
It was a cool idea,
but it's like it seems like for this little company, it's probably too big of a project, and for this little person just out of school, it's a lot.
Yep. But we ended up promising them a prototype, and they were going to use that as the basis to build off of, and expand and create what they actually wanted over a number of years with some core team that they were going to hire. And they were yeah.
Okay, so you were working on proof of
they were
concept.
ambitious. Say again, sorry.
You were working on proof of concept. Like, here's the idea,
Basically,
and here's
yeah.
like kind of
this is especially in indie games or in like project-based games, there's constantly this fight between like what the like client wants, what they think that you're going to give them, and what you can actually give them, and like somewhere in the middle is like what you end up with. So they wanted like a finished project they could use out of the box. We told them, we can give you proof of concept. We can give you first prototype that you can then take and you can try it with a small sample. Like, you can figure out what you need to. You can use this as like a launching point, a jump off point. So that was that first project, and we ended up giving them somewhere in between. Like, it was bigger than a first prototype, bigger than like a proof of concept, but not what they wanted. So like nobody was happy at the end. But anyways, so to like debut this product, they also wanted to have an event, and they kind of liked the work that I had done, so they kept me around to like help them like do the handover to a new team and also organize this event. And they wanted to make it, they called it a hackathon. It's just like a group of students working on different projects, and they were hoping that this would turn into like they could put these mini games in their world, and it would be like, aha, that that didn't work out the best. But I organized this whole friggin' thing, got all the people there, like got the food set up, got all of this like this whole event basically. And at the event they had Ubisoft recruiters. They convinced Ubisoft that there were going to be hundreds of students. There were like 30, 20 ish. So I ended up, I had free time because it wasn't as busy as they had anticipated. We had a ton of ticket sales and invites, but like it was during the week, and then there was like like the college campus, the college workers went on strike. So there was just like a bunch of disruptions for this whole event. Anyways, I had tons of time to talk to the recruiters. And we got to talking, and we, met and all that. So that was the handover. That was my first project, was this big, like just too big for what we had time for. And then like just a bunch it was a mess.
So
it was a lot of work. And
at this time you because this was after or during college, right? So you were
like
you were already.
Sorry, I didn't really.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's the online virtual like video conferencing common. Like, oh, you go. Are you sure you're not Canadian? So I went to university for art, and then after I went, did the whole ministry thing, did like, other jobs in between. And then I went back to school for game design for a 1-year program. So it was like a postgraduate diploma or something like that. It was like, it wasn't like a university. It was just like a college credit.
But
when you were technically a student.
Okay. But when you were in college, that was when you, at actual university, that was when you started wearing makeup full time, right? And wearing some of those.
It was when I was at school for game design.
Oh, okay. So when you applied for and were working with this company, were you working on premises, or were you working out of your home on it? And how out to them were you?
I was not out to them at all.
Okay.
I was super closeted. But like the funny thing is, I was wearing women's clothes and like heels, right? Like I was wearing like ankle boots with heels, but I was just like, they just I was living under my dead name. I was using he him pronouns. Like it was a time. Maybe they just thought I had an androgynous fashion sense. But I was working out of the college, and there was other like personal reasons that I didn't feel comfortable coming out to these people. So it was like that project. Like this is literally like the like switch over. It was after that project. I bet that like the Ubisoft recruiters at this like final event. This was my last working with these people. Met the recruiters, and they set me up with an interview, and that was when I started like going full time as trans, as a trans person, like
Mhm.
identifying openly. And it was
And so was it
yeah.
part of your experience with the recruiter? So you mentioned that you didn't come out to the previous game company at all. Was it
Mhm.
part of the fact of how the recruiter and the company seemed, that you felt comfortable coming out to them, or was it more what was going on in your personal life that preempted that or prompted that?
Yeah, good question. A little bit of both. So it was, the recruiters were super friendly,
Mm-hmm.
and they were just like really welcoming people. The people I interviewed with were also great. So it was a bunch of that, but also like this last job I had gotten before I had like kind of come out as trans. So like there was this like, yeah, like I got this job as, a straight cis man, and I started like transitioning after I had gotten this job. So I was just like, it felt weird, and this person tended, like, one of these people was a little aggressive, like frequently kind of aggressive, and like so it made me uncomfortable, and I just didn't want to deal with that. So I just like, stayed in the closet with them. But then like
Okay.
when I started interviewing for jobs beyond this one, I was actually like, I was at a point like, this is where I'm going. I don't want to hide it. I don't want to be in the closet. I don't want to not be open with these people.
Yeah.
This is going to
Great.
be part of my experience moving forward. So they better get ready. And that's kind of what that
Ready
was.
or
And
not.
also I just like, I got this exactly. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. I got the sense too that they were cool with it.
Nice.
Uh, so yeah.
So it was more just the people themselves. It wasn't like anything particular to the industry. Now, so Maddie is excited because she's like, "Yay, a fellow trans gamer, game
Yeah.
developer,
Cool.
developer, not gamer." But there's a lot of
Yeah.
trans gamers here. um, but what? How has the industry seemed to you? Has it been
Yes.
receptive, or are you do you go in do you go to any events, conferences, things like that where you represent the company or any of that kind of stuff?
I have um, thinking through them all. So like, games is a really interesting field to work in, because like game developers are like super diverse and like open to diversity, and like, it's something that they strive for within the industry.
Okay.
And then like gamers, like the like capital G gamers are very like, tend to be very toxic. And that's like,
Really?
I know that's
Okay.
a big swig, a big thick brush to sweep over everybody there, because there's like, this community is made up of gamers.
Mm-hmm.
But like the loud gamers that you see in forums, and like the ones that make the most noise
Yeah, get the
are
most
are
attention.
the
Yeah.
yeah, they're the ones that are like, oh, what the hell are you ruining our games with all these trans people? And just like, and then all the trans people are like, this is why I don't go on voice comms in multiplayer games, like,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
that's the kind of that's the dichotomy that we're like, games is. But
Mm-hmm.
like internally, it was wonderful. I came out to my team, so I started as a QC, a tester, and now I work as a level designer. As a tester, I came out to my whole team of like 15-ish people, because we were on a smaller project. It was Starlink, Battle for Atlas, which was like it's more of like a smaller project, more cartoony. It was kind of interesting compared to the rest of the Ubisoft games. But like, we had a small team of testers. I came out to them, and they're all like, cool. And as I was like coming out to these people, I was, heckin' nervous. My manager was totally supporting me. Like, we had a meeting leading up to it, or meeting or two, and like, how do you want to do this? Like, I met with her, and I was like, I want to come out to the team. And she's like, okay, how are we going to do this? What do you need me to do? And it was like ready to go, which is
That's
just like
wonderful.
A plus, 10 out
Mm-hmm.
of 10. And I came out to the team, and everyone was like, I saw people smiling, right? Like, that was one of those like giveaway moments. Like, I was like, hey everyone, I am going to be transitioning from male to female. Um, just letting you know, because things are going to start changing. And they were just like, people were like, nice. And it's like giving me like a thumbs up, like, this is awesome, like, so happy for you. And I was just like, yes, yes, yes. So it was really good. And then I like the people that were sitting beside me, like the like the other women or like that were kind of around me. Like one woman I got hired with, man, best friend. But she's like, hey, that's cool. Like, let me know if you need anything. And then we just got a lot closer because it's just like, oh, finally, she's like, yes, another woman on the team. But like in terms, the studio itself has been supportive. A lot of the people I work with, like, I'm not gonna like sugarcoat it and say like everyone was wonderful, because there are people like bad experiences, bad people everywhere. But the thing is, like, on the whole, the vast majority of people that I've worked with have been wonderful people. Wonderful about me being trans, super respectful, and just like really great people.
Yeah, I was
And like
surprised.
I've been able to talk to. Oh, you're sorry.
No, go ahead. No, you've been able to talk to.
Oh yeah, I've been able to talk to like higher up people, like directors on projects, and like be a person like, hey, if you need help, like, about like either gender representation or anything in these games or like anything like that, like I'm a person you can talk to. And like I can't get too many more details about like any of that stuff that's been happening, but like it's the studio has actually like set up like internal groups to employee resource groups, or what they called. So like to be able to have a group of people represented a group of people with similar experiences and similar identities represented, like, and give them a space to like come together and like go to the studio and be like, hey, like this is our experience, this is ways we think you can do better. So I've been like helping run the LGBTQ plus employee resource group, and like that's a space that the studio gave us to be like, hey, how can we do better, and like listening to my experience, and like, so there's been a lot of good to come out of it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I was pre coming out, I had all the negativity in my head again. I was afraid that nobody would talk to me, all of that. I was surprised how many friendships it strengthened, at work and outside. But like, you just sticking on work, like I found a very similar experience where it was like most people really accepted it and were really cool and happy about it, and congratulatory. And then what I kind of found, like the negative side of it was just like people kind of being uncomfortable or kind of ghosting and not really talking to me. Like there wasn't anything overtly negative. There were just like, there were people you could kind of tell either didn't know how to act or couldn't deal, and so they just kind of took a step back, and it's just like, all right, fine, I've got so many more great friends. All of my good relationships are better, and I've got new great relationships. It's just like, yeah, I don't need that.
Oh yeah, wholeheartedly. Just like, yes, this idea of like the positives are very vocal and very visible, and the negatives are just like, as a trans person, I'm sure most people in the chat will know, like, you can tell when you make someone uncomfortable just by existing. It's like you just see it on their face, or like the way they look at you. Like, there are some of those people, but like thankfully the number of supportive people I work with are just so far and away louder and more supportive, and just like are to the point where the people that like, the like respect that I get at work is enough to make those people, like, make sure those people are quiet and make them feel uncomfortable that they don't like me because I'm trans. Like,
well, yeah, I kind of go back and forth, and I enjoy it, and I think that it spurs me to sort of play a little bit of a game. Like I see them, I can tell they're uncomfortable, so I like, I'm just particularly out in public, like I make it a point to make eye contact and say hi to them. And smile and say hi and wave, like I can tell from 30 feet away that you're uncomfortable with my presence, and as we pass, I'm going to make it a point to say hi to you and smile and make you react to me. Like, and a lot of them still will just kind of like ignore or whatever, but like, some of them out of kind of forced politeness or whatever, will smile and say, yeah. Or they'll actually smile and say hi or whatever. And it's just like, even if it wasn't genuine, like I love to do that, to be like, I'm a person, I'm a good person, and like I'm gonna be polite to you and kind, and I'm not gonna be afraid. I'm not gonna cower.
This award goes to you.
Oh, I'm so glad to accept it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will
Oh yeah,
cherish
no,
my.
it's the power that you have is like once you're like confident in your identity to be like, you're uncomfortable with me,
Mhm.
I am comfortable with me, and I don't care.
And
So
I just
I'm going to treat you like a normal fucking human being,
yeah.
like you should be treating me right now.
Yeah, and I'm going to show you that like yeah, this isn't something to be afraid of. I'm just a normal person and I'm
I'm
a
not gonna
kind
bite.
person and you're I'm not going to cower away from you. You're going to have to interact with me at some level, even if it's to ignore me. And that, that even that is an action and you're doing that.
Yep.
And I'm going to force that on you because I can. And
Mhm.
I just sometimes there's a little bit of a spite in it, but for the most part, most of it is just like I want you to have a positive experience with me,
Yeah.
and to know there are trans women around. I never saw any when I was a kid growing up or going through any of this, so
Mhm.
I think it's important that we were visible, and like I said, I make it a point to kind of force the interaction so that maybe that's the band-aid for them. Like they've never interacted, they're afraid, and it's just like, oh, that wasn't that big of a deal, and so maybe that like sticks.
I'm not
That's the
gonna
hope.
make you gay
No. Yeah.
unless you already were.
Hmm.
But like, yeah, too true, too true.
So I think I'm gonna let this wrap up unless you have any other specific things you want to talk about the video game industry, specifically that is positive or negative for trans. You've already kind of hit some really good things. I love the way your company is, but if there's anything else just kind of industry wide.
I think it just there's been a lot of growth, especially lately. The idea of underrepresented people and stories starting to like make more of make more of a like a presence, which is great. So like I'm thankful to be in a place where I can like try to push for that more and more. But the idea of like trans identities in games,
Mm-hmm.
trans bodies, even just like trans stories is something that's like growing more and more,
Mm-hmm.
which it's great. So like that's something that like been it hasn't been the best before,
Mm-hmm.
but like it's getting better. So like I'm glad to be a part of that.
We got a question from the chat that's along these lines. Do you think there's a need to do that kind of an info session, sit down in a business environment, having both worked in large companies? Um, I think that awareness and visibility are important. And then, yeah, I think telling stories and having those kind of conversations. So it's really kind of multi-layered. Like
Hmm.
you have to have I think a specific coming out to your team to tell them that yeah, if you've presented one way, especially for a long time. Like I've worked at my company for 10 years before I came out, so it's just like it's going to be a big thing. So you do have to do something,
Oh
at
yeah.
least in your team. You got to let your manager know, and in your team. That's important. And then it's just about being visible and interacting with people in your company. But I do think there is more that needs to happen. I do think that there's some education that needs to happen, and that's why it's great when you have a company that will do like yours did, where they put
Yeah.
together kind of a coalition.
Yeah, the even before we actually had that group, which is like something that I think is pretty indicative of like the effort they're trying to put in. They brought in, so I don't know if anyone in the chat, I don't know who's in the chat, but if anyone is from Toronto, they brought in the 519, which is a like an LGBTQ plus rights and like charity and like a community center. Like it's a major hub of activity in the queer community in Toronto. They brought them in for we called them lunch and learns. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like your lunch hour, you get free lunch, and you like learn about something. And we had packed the like area, like auditorium space that we have for that, and it was about like different topics through Pride Month last year. It was like gender identity and expression, like we talked about like privilege and like queer experiences and uh like what is, you know, what is gender was one of them. Like there's just like these topics that like, you know, there were these education efforts that the studio was putting in to be like, hey, you know, this is important. We have these people in our community. We need more of these people in our office, in our workplace, because diversity literally just makes our products better. From like a raw business profit standpoint, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if
Yeah.
I'm there telling part of my story in a game, that someone like me will see that and enjoy that and want to buy it. Like, so it's just, yeah. But like that was something that they were doing as well. So there is like, I think there's a need everywhere, and like it's something that should be a part of employee training and employee onboarding. Is this idea of gender diversity, gender expression, pronouns,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the basic facts of like of how to just be base level respectful of people of differing gender identities, gender expressions, sexual orientations. It's just
Um,
like yes,
what's the name of that group again? The five.
the 519. Yeah, if you just Google either 519 or the 519, like it's
Mm-hmm.
the number 519.
Yeah, I love that idea for a couple reasons, and it's just like, you know, I'm always trying to think of other ways to kind of expand what I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
here. I think that this show is what I want it to be, but I'm thinking of other things to kind of supplement it with, and I love that idea of like little quick bites of like, you know, those educational things and fun videos, and I think it could be really cool, you know, for us to hear them and be affirmed of them and all of that. But then also
Probably.
like if,
Yeah.
if you're trying to come out to your family, like here, show them this video, and you know.
Send it to you over Discord.
Okay, awesome. Um,
Their website. Yeah.
what I like to close with this. What advice? What key points would you make to young and closeted trans people out there? What are some of like the key
Oh
nuggets of
God,
wisdom that you have
that's
that you'd love
huge.
to share?
As a trans elder,
Mm-hmm.
um, God, that's such a huge title. I can't believe I just fucking claimed that for myself. Um, Goodness gracious. If however you're doing it, as long as you're safe and happy, you're doing it right, is one big key, right? Like, there's no single way to do this right. Um, and it, yeah, if don't do it until like, I mean, like, don't do it till you're ready. I started saying that, and it's like I'm not sure it's sitting right the way I worded it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, don't. Yeah, I don't know how to word that any better. It's
What?
honestly just like, I guess it's like, don't kick yourself for not being ready sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Is probably a better way to put it.
What I like to
Don't resent. Go ahead.
yeah, what I like to kind of push is like to allow yourself the flexibility of, you know, push yourself to push the boundaries. Like have the
Yeah,
faith and the confidence to push the boundaries, but allow
yeah,
yourself to to bounce back from that. Like if you feel comfortable wearing a dress one day and then like next week like the idea freaks you out, like it doesn't mean anything good, bad, or indifferent. It just means that this week that you're not comfortable with it. So allow yourself to back off of it. Keep trying to push it forward, but also allow yourself that space to really accept it and become comfortable with it. You know, because you don't want to push too hard and then like make yourself, you know, give yourself like a bad experience and hurt your progression.
yeah. That's Thank you for just making that so much better than I probably would have ever done that. Because it's like, yes, just don't like be, you know, be feel free to be confidently you, as probably is another way to like, yeah. And but also like, again, like there might be setbacks. You might, you know, your emotions change day to day, week to week. And at the same time, like, I do think it is important, like, don't be mad for not trying sooner, because like if you weren't ready, you weren't ready. But like, you know, push yourself a little bit. There are ways I wish I pushed myself a little sooner, or like talked to my parents a little more openly when I was younger about things I was feeling. Like, but don't let those regrets weigh you down, because they're there for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Is that motivational enough?
I think so. It's just all about truth. It's all about the truth of what the experience is, and then the truth of your experiences is obviously what's valid. That's kind of the point you're making, but I'm also making that to you as a guest on this show.
Yeah.
Like, your truth is valid, and that's what we want people to hear, because it will resonate with somebody, and that's wonderful.
100%. Yeah, your truth is valid. Yep. Bingo. That's
Awesome.
That's it. That's what I want people to know. Take away from this.
Peach threw in a last comment. LOL. Elder is too much a title, but you claimed the Queen of Queens with no issue. Oh, Queen of Queers.
The Queen of Queers. Issue. Yes.
So.
Well, obviously.
And
I'm gonna change my Twitch stream to AnaBeQueerly.
And she says, "Oh, I love you, Anna." But then
I love you too, Peach.
I love you, Anna. Lol. So.
Anna.
So she followed up with a LOL. So I don't know if the sincerity's there or not.
That's just our relationship. That's our friendship, right? That's got you, girl. Man, how about we have like a Peach Roof appreciation conversation here? Friggin' best mod ever.
Yeah, well, yeah, we've talked about that a couple times, maybe not necessarily in the stream, but if for those of you that have or have not seen Peach Roof's name pop up, she is the mod for all of the people on Twitch. So
all of Twitch,
all of them, yes.
I think she actually is like the owner and founder of Twitch, because like literally every Twitch space I've been in, Peach Roof is there.
At very, very least, I mean, we're exaggerating. At very least, 90% of the trans women Twitch streams on here, so she's
100% of the trans women streams I've been to. Peach Roof is there, so like yeah, you're right, you're totally right.
Okay, real quick, Peach,
yes.
Since we've got the focus on you, how many streams are you modding right now?
I think I actually know this. I think it's 13.
No, I mean at this exact moment, how many streams are up that she's modding on right now? Because it's usually around 3.
My guess would be at least, probably 3. My guess.
All right. Just
yes.
us, but yeah, in general, 13. Okay. Everybody that was here and watched, thank you so much. Thank you for hanging out all the way to the end. This is a long one. We went 3 hours. 3 hours.
I told you I go long. This is my trademark.
And I've meant to.
I'm going to be a 1 hour stream.
But
3 hours
about
later.
the hour and a half mark, I usually start to kind of freak out of like, oh, we're dragging on. And it's just like, we're just having fun tonight. So I let it go.
I'm a chatty bitch.
I definitely am too. So thank you.
Okay, good.
Is there anything else that you want to say? I just want to thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I don't know if people know this, but I had another guest lined up and they backed out at the very last minute. And so stepping in, I appreciate that so much. You're so wonderful.
I was really excited when you mentioned that. I was like, yes. I'm cheating right now. I popped open the chat on Twitch so that I could just like say thanks to everybody. I know I wasn't supposed to, so please don't be mad. But I just wanted to be like, thank you everybody, because like literally it's just this is wonderful. This is like I mentioned when you were like, I'm thinking about starting this transgender show, and I was just like, yo, do it, so cool. And I was just like, because this is something that I've wanted. I couldn't do it myself. Like I just like don't have the mental space or capacity to do what you're doing, and I really value it. Like it's needed. It's super valued, even for me. Like someone who just comes on here and gabs at people for 3 hours. But like it's super valuable. It's super important to let trans people know that they're not alone in their experiences, because that was something we talked about. I don't know if we brought it up in this last 3 hours, because like my whole afternoon with you has been wonderful, and it's just blurred together. So like. It honestly, like, there were so many times when I was feeling things and thinking things and like, God, I must be alone. Like, no, this is so crazy. This is so weird. And just realizing like, no, this is like a really common experience in the trans community. And it's really helpful to know you're not on your own. So like, thank you for making this show so friggin' much.
Thank you so much for saying that. That's wonderful to hear. Like that's the whole
Ugh.
point. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yes, and you're doing it so well.
Well, thank you. Again, I love you so much for being on. Thank you so much, and of course for the kind
Yeah.
words. Everybody in the
Thank you
chat,
so much for having me.
thank you so much for being here and watching. There's one more slide after this that has Anna's other. I got AnaBeQueerly on Twitch and Twitter, and then Anna B. Norton on Instagram.
It's
And
yeah, I need to change that over. But like, I got family members on there, and I just don't want to be like, oh, like, super gay in their face. But like, man, I mean, come on now. At this
yeah,
point, you
yeah.
should know it.
And have your theme song. I'm super. Thanks for asking.
I'm so super.
Do you know that one from
Yeah,
South Park?
Pardon?
Do you know that one from South Park? Big gay
I
owl
didn't watch a lot of
and
I didn't watch a lot of South Park. I've watched episodes and like just for some reason like it was just the channel it was on or like where it ended up in the week or like prime time. I just didn't get the chance to watch it. But like yeah, I'm dragging you into conversation again.
yeah, we're gonna make it a 4-hour
Run away,
stream.
run away.
Let's let the chat go home. I love now I'll tangent, damn it. One of my favorite things that a saying my grandpa had is he would look at his wife and say, "All right, Martha, let's go to bed. Our guests want to go home."
That works.
I thought that was genius. It's a great way to kick people out. But yeah, let's let our guests go. Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll talk again very soon. And
yes, I'm looking forward to it.
For everybody in the chat, I do not have a guest for next Monday, so I got to bust my butt on that tomorrow. But we will have another show next Monday, 7 o'clock. Probably won't go this long. I don't think any of them ever will, but yeah, we'll see you next week. I'm going to go to the closing screen so you can see Anna's stuff there, and then I will find a chat to raid into. So if you or another stream to raid into, if you've got somebody that you like that you want me to raid into, put that in the chat. I love you guys. I'll see you next Monday.
I am so sorry.